A very good evening, and thank you for patience with our technical issues. Welcome to the mBBC election stream. Tonight we will be going to all 50 constituencies up and down the country to determine the voters' verdict on the new parliament. Will Leafy Emerald be re-elected with an increased mandate for the Conservatives to form a new right-wing majority government? Or will it be the turn of Labour and Nuke Mouse to assemble a traffic-light coalition to govern the country and take us in a different direction? How will the crucial impact of the beginning of the Brexit talks play out? And which government will be the one shaping it? Will it perhaps be a new, unforeseen governing coalition, perhaps led by the classical Liberals? Tonight, we will find out what our Parliament will look like, who will be representing us, and what our future is. I am joined in the studio this evening by former Commons Speaker Indigo Rolo. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now, could you tell us a little about the election system in play here? How does it work? How does voting work at a local level and a national level?
Absolutely, it's mandated in my contract. So the United Kingdom is divided into 50 constituencies, and there are also 50 regional seats. The way it works is it's a simple one person, one vote in each constituency, and the person with the most votes wins. After that, regional seats are distributed to parties to make the result as proportional as possible, although it isn't a perfect system.
I see. That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Now, also joining us is Toast in Russian, who I believe has some minor technical issues, but don't worry, everything's fine. Are you there, Toast?
I'm here. Hello.
Yep, don't worry about a thing. I think we've got you fixed. So, welcome to the studio. It's very nice to have you on. So, what are your takes on the election as a whole? Remembering, of course, that as the mBBC, we do have to remain non-partisan. But what do you think about the overall performance and the overall shape of the campaigns?
I'm coming here as an apolitical member of the mBBC, so of course we're going to be non-partisan. I think it was a campaign that was run pretty equally by all parties, but that means that the Conservatives aren't going to be doing as well as they might want. They were hit pretty hard in the polls by the budget, 10 points either way. Just that's feeding. If I was the Greens and the Lib Dems, I would be pretty heavily worried this evening, because they weren't doing so well in the polls, and the Lib Dems after losing overhang seats. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting election. I no doubt think we'll see a very, very hung parliament this election.
I see. And how do you think...
Of course, the interesting seats tonight to watch are, of course, Cumbria and Lancashire North, Nottinghamshire, Cornwall and Devon, Northern Ireland, and Buckinghamshire is also proving to be very interesting to watch.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, how do you see, this is a question to both of you, if it turns out that there is an extremely hung parliament, then how does the government go around governing in a coalition system where they may not be able to achieve a consensus for the ideas they want to push? What if it's so hung that neither side can effectively wield a majority due to partisan splits?
Well, MHoC isn't, in recent years, MHoC hasn't had coalitions steadily have a majority. It's actually only recently that we've seen a government manage to get a majority, although they assure me that it's only a technical majority and it wouldn't be an absolute majority that could pass a budget. Usually what has happened in the past is we've had governments on 34 seats who seek to get supply and confidence. They do a more informal arrangement with other like-minded opposition parties. So you could possibly see a situation where you have Labour, the Liberal Democrats, and the classical Liberals not have a majority in themselves, but they could perhaps seek confidence and supply in constitutional votes from, say, the Libertarians or the Green Party.
I see. I'm afraid I'm going to have to come in now because we have our first result of the evening coming in. Now, our first result is, hopefully, from Tyne and Wear. Now, Tyne and Wear, of course, being the Green first past the post seat, currently expected to be a bellwether for their performance. Let's see how that's come out. And we see that the Greens have held the constituency of Tyne and Wear with a much slimmer majority than one was historically there. This was historically considered quite a close seat historically, but this is much less so now, of a majority of just shy of 9,000 against Britboy 3456, who was backed by the Conservative Party. And we're seeing the Classical Liberals, NB Geordie, still significantly greater than past vote shares here for the Classical Liberals, but still very far behind. Now, an interesting... go on, please, go on.
If I may say what we've seen here, I don't think this looks as bad as it is for the Greens, because as we all know, MB Geordie did a bit of a flip-flop where he flew around different parties. So he's originally from the Greens. In fact, he was Principal Speaker. So I think it's actually just a bit of opposition, like the vote splitting between the two opposition parties. But we have to commend Britboy for doing pretty well there. It doesn't look like it's going to be a terrible night for the NUP as it stands. So we can be hopeful. So the NUP can be hopeful there.
Tyne and Wear here has clearly been a very saturated seat with three incredibly high-profile candidates. I mean, people in Tyne and Wear have obviously been spoiled for choice. So, yeah, obviously, as you say, it's that massive question of, do you go for the former Green leader or the Green candidate?
Yes, that is the £1 million question here, I suppose, and it's important to note we can't judge too greatly the performance of the NUP from this, because they were, of course, backed by the Conservatives. So it is very possible the NUP have shrunk, but the Conservatives have grown. That is one possible outcome, or it could be the other way around. It's very hard to say at this point. Although it is interesting to note that the Greens have shrunk this much from what was a very safe seat, so that this was expected to be a sort of bellwether for the rest of the country, because if the Greens do poorly in Tyne and Wear, then that can become an indicator for how they'll do in the rest of the country, because if they have difficulty holding a safe seat, then that looks very, very sketchy on their marginals, of which they have quite a few.
I think this is...
I've just received an anonymous message from one of my sources in NUP HQ, who heard a senior party member say they NUP'd the Clibs. So we see that the NUP must be feeling pretty confident after that result for this, for a strong showing this evening. I mean, they're a party whose base doesn't really shift around. They generally stay on the same number of seats. So it might be looking like an all right night for the NUP.
Certainly, if the single market referendum is anything to go by, they could potentially do very well in sort of the east half of the country, so the northeast. Actually, when you think about it, could be certainly a bit of a homeland for them, along with places such as Yorkshire and the southeast.
Now, the question that we might want to be considering also is, are we expecting places where campaigning has been quite weak to remain loyal to party lines? For example, a lot of the home counties are very traditionally Conservative supporting and very traditionally produce Conservative first past the post seats. Now, the question is, will that occur even in the face of stronger campaigning and arguably stronger showing from opposition parties?
Well, I suppose we can find that out, because our next seat is Manchester City and South, where party lines haven't been usual. So should we go to that now?
We shall indeed. You have just caught me when I was about to throw it in. The Manchester City and South has indeed declared. We are seeing here a surprise win for the Classical Liberals. The Classical Liberals have managed, due to the defection of the former Liberal Democrat candidate George WB 131, to secure a narrow majority over Labour competitor Mr Pieface 2. So we are seeing an unexpected win for the Classical Liberals here.
So I think that answers your own question.
It does.
asking whether the party can manage to hold on to its loyalty in the face of not campaigning. I mean, Labour, Manchester. Like, how would Labour?
That used to be last election. That was an incredibly safe seat.
I mean, Manchester is supposed to be Labour's heartland. It wasn't so long ago that you'd have local councils where every member of the local council was an elected Labour councillor. So I think the fact that they've, not ignored this constituency, but haven't had the kind of boots on the ground presence that George W.B. has, well, it's narrow, but it's blown up in their faces.
It's quite a swing. To have this completely unexpected.
Can I also just say, Ghoulish Bulldog on 2,862 votes. You can barely. I did have to look again on our graphics here in the studio because I can see the bar charts for the other three parties, and I wasn't sure whether that was actually their vote share or just the default placement for where a party's vote is supposed to be.
Yeah, we certainly weren't expecting to see on our graphics this time the words "classical liberals lead."
Before this election, I had a good discussion with the man who did with the man and woman who set out where people would be standing for the Conservatives, and they had some issue around where they were going to place people because it's just every party in MHoC is having troubles with membership, but it's hard when you have 40 seats, 35 of them, I believe, constituency seats. So it's hard to place people. It's hard to place people in every seat from the Conservatives. So we can see why in some places they're going to have a really poor showing because they just simply don't have enough good candidates.
Is that perhaps why we saw the Conservatives embracing the idea of endorsements, which they haven't traditionally done? In the past election, they made sure that they stood a candidate in every single constituency, even ones they didn't think they could win.
I think Conservatives stood one in all bar two, and I believe, not that I know, but I assume that was because that occurred because they'd get more out of it in the party vote than if they just if they stood somebody there and lost. But they stood somebody in 50 seats, so they could get a lot of They stood in 50 seats. So 48 seats. So you've got to give them credit for that.
One more question I suppose you have to ask is, does this result show that the daft culture of defection actually does pay?
I think it does. I think you've got a very fair point there, Ron, actually, because two defections we've seen, one's paid off, and the second one has the second one only missed by about 10,000 votes, and a minuscule percentage.
Yes, perhaps this could be an indication of a more unstable time for party politics, where people are even less tied to a party than they used to be.
Well, I'm joined in the studio now by Zukov236, who is the newly elected Member of Parliament, the first Member of Parliament of this House of Commons for Tyne and Wear. Hello, Zukov, how are you?
Hello, I'm sorry if I interrupted earlier. It's great to be here.
Not at all. We're very happy to have you.
Yeah, it's great earning the confidence of the people of Tyne and Wear. I would like to thank the people of Tyne and Wear for giving me a chance to represent them, and I hope I can make them proud.
How did you find the campaign this time around?
Oh, I found it pretty nice actually. The debates were in Tyne and Wear, especially the northeast England. I thought was really nice because it was very civil. It was very oriented towards policy. There wasn't major attacks on personality like you saw in some of the other debates. So I thought Tyne and Wear's campaign was pretty nice. Other than that,
one quick question, and I'm going to have to butt in because we do have a declaration on the way.
Yep.
One quick question is: how do you feel about the fact that the Green vote share has dropped significantly here? Do you think this could be a bellwether?
Yeah.
Just very quickly.
I think this has been a very challenging time for the Greens, and I'm happy for the fact that I won, but I'm not going to go around the bush here. I do think there's going to be some trouble retaining our seats this time around.
Okay,
but
I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there. We have two declarations coming in now from North London and from Hampshire South. In North London, we're seeing the incumbent mayor, Rilnai Bevan, being able to secure a North London seat, beating out very closely the Green competitor with a majority of 5,810 votes. In Hampshire South, we're seeing the Conservatives holding on to their seat with a majority of 4,745, with the Greens in close second and Liberal Democrats somewhat behind. A fairly non-partisan seat.
To go back to that North London result, that's
a shocking result.
Well, I mean, it's got two candidates are basically neck and neck, and nobody else has any votes. Is this tactical voting gone wild? I mean, it's certainly a very interesting race there.
Well, what's interesting there is if it's a case of tactical voting, then that's a very unusual example of it, because tactical voting with the Greens and Labour, who are very closely aligned on their vision for the country, is very unusual, because that isn't usually how tactical voting would occur. You would tactically vote for, say, Labour over the Conservatives. You wouldn't usually tactically vote for Labour over the Greens, for example.
It seems to me like the selection campaign is actually, the campaign means more than even last election. I mean, last election the voters watched the campaign pretty extensively, and it seems this election they watched it even more so. Or perhaps it could be on candidates who didn't campaign hard. The voters just didn't even bother to listen to them when they tried to.
Didn't even show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Certainly no die-hard voters, it looks like.
May I ask the turnout on the North London seat?
I'm afraid I don't have the figures to hand. I could find them out for you if you'd like.
No,
I will get
fine.
I will get one of our young interns, who we are cruelly exploiting, as I'm sure the new MP for North London would tell us, and I shall whip him into finding out for you.
Excellent. Well, I'm just going to bring Rilnai Bevan actually into the studio so that we can interview him. Rilnai Bevan. Oh, hang on. I'm struggling to get him into the. Can you? The door is locked.
Oh dear. Have you got the key? It's under the desk, next to the teapot.
Which teapot?
The red one. You know, the red one with all the stripy bits. Not the green one that changes colour. The red one with the stripes.
I think Rilnai Bevan's just on the phone briefly. He's trying to stay outside the room, but he's got this.
Oh, that's why we can't find him.
Here he is.
Hello, Rilnai Bevan. Welcome. We've got tea ready for you. How are you?
Have you got the?
Hi. Is this working?
Yes,
it is working. We can hear you.
Your voice is working.
Hallelujah.
All right. Hi. So, I'm really excited about being back as an MP. Yeah.
How did you? That's a close campaign. Were you perhaps worried that you wouldn't get in?
I mean, I really wasn't, because the campaign, it was like very evident that I had out-campaigned the Green candidate and I guess everybody else, because I had been searching over the course of the campaign, and it seemed like I was the only one who was actually making campaign posts. Like, I think I made 6 to the Green candidates 1, and the rest of the parties didn't bother at all, which I think has a lot to do with the Labour and
annihilated.
Green. Yeah, Labour and Green domination there.
Do you think that your moval from the Conservatives to Labour helped or hindered you here?
Well, I mean, like, I think it helped a lot, because I had always wanted to represent London anyway. Of course, as an MP for Northumbria, I thought it was a little bit odd being.
It was a bit of a commute, wasn't it? I can tell you that's up my neck of the woods. The trains are diabolical getting up there. I do feel for you.
Yeah, well, so much for the Tory transport policy, huh?
Yeah, really kind of proved the NUP, the Conservatives' point there when during the election. They said it wasn't the budget failed because of people in their career interest, not the national interest, and we get somebody, Mayor of London, coming on saying it was a better move in his career to switch to the Labour. So that's I find that quite interesting.
Well, I mean, like, I think that clearly my resignation from the Conservatives was more on principle than careerism. I mean, like, clearly I could have been re-elected to Northumbria. Of course, I was elected both as Tory Mayor of London and as the MP for Northumbria with pretty decent margins. So I could have been re-elected either way. But I think it's more my own personal stance on the budget and my own rebellion, which has helped me stand up for the people of London and has, in some ways, I guess, advanced my career.
Well, while we're talking about, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut in.
I'm so sorry. You go ahead. I think we're saying the same thing.
Yes. On the topic of central London, let's go there. Now, in central London, there is a declaration imminent. And we are seeing that Labour has gained from the Greens. The Greens, in fact, endorsed them here, despite this being a seat they held through a Green independent attached. Here they endorsed Labour's candidate, Premier Hirohito, and he has secured an impressive majority of 172,249 votes, with Padanab being the closest competitor, significantly behind, with about a third of his vote share.
I suppose this... how do you feel about this, Ronald Bevan? It's your former mayoral rival. A very impressive majority, but of course you're now both in the same party. How do you feel?
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to getting to work with him more in the London Assembly. Of course, now that that's being restarted, I'm looking forward to having a big Labour majority there, so we can get some stuff done and really help out Londoners.
Toast, you said you wanted to find out what the turnout was in North London.
That I did.
Well, we've got one of our young what's the word? Interns. That's the word. And he's gone and he's crunched the numbers for us. He's dotted the T's, he's crossed the I's, something like that. And the turnout was 49.75%.
49.7%.
75.
That's 75. That's possibly that must be some of the lowest turnout of the night. That's abysmal turnout.
Well, we'll see. I mean, compared to Tyne and Wear, it's a significant drop. Tyne and Wear had 87.81.
Gosh, that's a huge variation.
Which is something I'm very proud of.
It shows that none of the Conservative voters showed up.
Yes.
None of the Conservatives showed up.
We do have to congratulate Zukov on that fairly
Oh no, it's not just me. It's not just me. Oh no, it's not just me. The whole race was really active, and all three candidates really participated. I think that made all the difference.
Yeah, Tyne and Wear definitely seems to be an example of just how much engagement you can produce by active campaigning, because we see on one hand a very split campaign with very limited campaigning outside of two candidates with much lower turnout. And when you see admittedly only three candidates due to endorsements, but nonetheless when you see three candidates showing up and really giving it their all, then you can see just how much it is impossible to engage the electorate. The electorate aren't disinterested with politics, but they're just disinterested with bad politicians, is I think the takeaway we can get from this.
I thought, if I may point out, I thought that the other seat, Hampshire South, so that was quite an interesting seat, because, sorry to cough there, because the Libertarian Party had they had a strong showing, but the vote was just so split. So that was interesting. We haven't seen that. That's possibly the first seat we've seen where the vote was split amongst all parties.
Yeah, and it's
so
if we do see that play out tonight, then what we'll find perhaps is that there will be an increased appetite for more formalised electoral pacts. When we saw what was beginning to form in Scotland with the Traffic Light Coalition and their mass mutual endorsement, where generally they didn't stand against each other in the devolved elections for Holyrood. We may be starting to see that happen by the next general election everywhere, because people start to realise that to maximise their gains, especially in very split constituencies, they may be able to swing them over and pick up more than the list system proportionally entitles them to.
And speaking of, we have yet another London constituency. We now go to the declarations of West London and another city constituency of Birmingham, Solihull and Coventry. Let's go there now.
Yes, now in West London we're seeing the Greens have lost the seat, with the Conservatives gaining the seat from the Greens. The Conservatives have put out an impressive showing and have managed to secure a majority of 59,436. The Greens have been knocked down to third place behind Wakey RKO, who is there on behalf of the Liberal Democrats. In Birmingham, Solihull and Coventry, we're seeing that Labour has gained a seat, also from the Greens, with Redwine PSY securing a majority of 78,890, with the Conservatives in second place and the Greens again knocked to third place. Now,
I have to say, going to the West London result, the Communists on 3 votes.
yeah, that is...
How surprised are we by this?
That is clearly very crippling for the Communists, who have had quite a weak campaign. They didn't manage to put out a manifesto. They've had a very weak term, so it seems the voters have judged them harshly for failings in the Parliament.
I'm not an election law specialist, but you have to have a certain number of people saying you should stand as a candidate, no?
Yeah,
and that number is
3
greater
votes.
than 3. The number is greater than 3. So some people that signed on the communist candidate didn't even vote for him.
I think
Ouch.
this goes a
That's
bit beyond.
depressing.
This goes a bit beyond losing your deposits.
Can I also point out the LP, the Libertarian Party, that they're showing in less so, well, Birmingham, Solihull, and Coventry, like to start with, but then also the London seat, they had quite a poor showing. Did they endorse anybody there? Because
If they had have endorsed, they wouldn't be standing there.
that's true. Actually, it's a surprising showing.
And
So
I suppose that
Libertarians,
we're looking at potentially a very bad night for a hopeful new party.
Yes, it's very
gamble
possible the
of-
Libertarians could end up going the way Progress went, where they very narrowly scraped some seats and then died
Oh,
soon
hold on.
after.
Let's not be that harsh. I don't think anything could rival.
Yeah.
The real story for tonight has got to be the Greens. Like, look at them. They're losing seats in London, which you would expect to be a big Green stronghold. I mean, I think we've already seen the issues that the Greens have had, but I know at least in my seat, they had some troubles campaigning. And it looks like that's been echoed throughout London and I guess throughout the country.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because we're also seeing a lack of coherence to the way they've approached this election. So they've stood in places where they were expected to have quite a weak base, and endorsed in places where they already had a constituency seat secured. So perhaps part of the problem is a lack of overall strategy, which we may see play out tonight, where there's a lack of planning on how they're going to approach this election. But we shall see if that plays out.
Gosh, you feel like it's about the right time for a constituency to declare, don't you?
That is yeah. I'd like to point out that the Libertarian Party can't be too happy at the moment after having to pay the government specifically a whole bunch of money in deposits, and so far not seeing much of it getting back.
Taxation
I'm
without
getting,
representation.
yeah, they're not getting represented here as the voters have shown. I think I'm going to be out to get a tweet from one of my sources, well, not a tweet, but a message from one of my sources in Green HQ.
You have
that might
feelers
give us a
everywhere.
light on.
You have feelers
I do.
everywhere.
I have my feelers firmly extended, and that might
Goodness.
explain to us the kind of mood in there. But the mood in Green HQ mustn't be positive, I think. Sorry, did you say to cut?
No. Please do continue.
And judging by the amount of leadership contests we've had over the past term, 4, 5? I don't know if Contravan and the MC will be too stable in the Greens. You might be seeing a Zukov premiership.
Indeed.
And just to bring you now, we now have Southwest London, and sorry, I'll let you talk.
Yes, no. I was about to say that exactly. We are expecting declarations to come in any moment now from Leeds and Wakefield and from the constituency of South West London. So, Real and I, Bevan, keep those peepers open. Now, in Leeds and Wakefield, we've seen Labour have secured a seat formerly held by the Communist grouping, with Labour's Desert Fox 929 securing over the 2 other candidates, and the Conservative candidate and the LP UK candidate with a majority of 69,607. And
Stride. Sorry.
You can come in a moment, but I have to finish this.
Okay.
The Liberal Democrats have gained a seat from the Conservative Party in South West London, where we are seeing the Conservative candidate Watench being knocked back by Horizon 2K, the Liberal Democrat candidate, with a majority of 47,918, and this in a seat that saw a significant campaign.
I have to say, the Libertarian in Leeds and Wakefield, over 100,000 votes. I'd like to personally apologise for my comment saying that it was going to be a bad night for them. 100,000 votes in Leeds and Wakefield. That's a very impressive.
Yes, that is quite a fair comment, but it may be perhaps that the Libertarian result, whatever it may be more driven by local level campaigning than it is by national. They won't be able to piggyback on a national campaign, for example, to get paper candidates elected, but they may be able to have very strong local showing, especially as they're an independent grouping. That's not unexpected. You would expect them to be more constituency focused, with a greater attention to their local constituencies than perhaps would be common in a larger party.
And Stridley, of course, is a very, very well-known member of the political establishment, so I'm sure he's going to be very happy, and if they manage to get a list seat out of that, I think he's going to be very happy to take it.
That's actually an excellent result for the Lib Dems. My commiserations out to the Conservative candidates who both worked pretty hard. I think, and I'm surprised the Communists didn't even stand somebody in that seat, considering, well, it was their seat. But if you want to, pardon, sorry. Oh,
Anyway,
okay.
just to interrupt you there, I'd like to say thank you to Zukov236, who has to go back to Green Party headquarters
All right.
And
Thank you.
thank you very much for joining us. And in the studio now we have Horizon
2K?
2K, who is the new Member of Parliament for South West London. Good evening, Horizon.
Congratulations.
Thank you very
Horizon,
much.
I hear you're going to be renaming yourself Horizon 48K in honour of your majority. Is that true?
Well, I think that's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll stick.
It is a bit, isn't it?
2K for just a tad, yeah.
If I may just briefly just cut in just for literally just 2 seconds, I've heard that the Green HQ are hopeful of new gains later on in the night, but they're cautious and to quote, they're not feeling the best right now. And I've heard that Conway isn't actually at Green HQ this evening. He had other business that might have actually taken his attention.
Oh, he's a busy man.
Sorry for that. Sorry about that, Horizon.
That's all right.
So, Horizon, what's your take on South West London as a whole? How did you think the campaign went? How did you think the engagement was for other parties? What was your feeling? Because you've been on the doorsteps there a lot more than we have.
Yeah, it was a good campaign. You know, my congratulations to W10. He ran a good campaign himself as well. You know, I ran in the constituency last time against Dominion, where I sort of came a disappointing fourth. So I was quite sure I wanted to, do a lot better this time. And I'm very glad to the supporters of South West London who did that. It was a heavy Remain constituency where I went out campaigning for Remain as well. So I think they know me there. But it was an interest because there was a lot going on across London. You can already see in London there's already a lot of different parties winning.
Yes, that's very interesting. Thank you. Now, we're going to go to our next result of the evening, which has come from Merseyside. Now, Merseyside has declared a Labour hold. This is the seat where Nuke Mouse, leader of the Labour Party, stood. We are seeing a massive majority. I believe the largest majority we've seen so far tonight. Nuke Mouse has accrued 2,422... let's try that again. 242,327 votes with a majority of 187,092, and we're seeing the right wing split quite significantly behind. Even when put together, they don't even come to halfway of Nuke Mouse's vote, and we see the Communists doing less badly than they did with their free votes with 1,521. So perhaps they're gaining. I'm not quite sure. Maybe this is the Communist surge.
Okay, I don't want to keep interrupting, but can I comment on the last one where which candidate beat Park Jae-il Sung, Conservative candidate?
Where was that?
That was the one before the one with Tench lost.
Leeds and Wakefield?
It would have been Leeds and Wakefield. I think that's
we're not very good at
seat
this, are
because-
we? We're already forgetting. It was
Sorry.
Labour.
Yeah, that's an interesting seat because that's part. We were talking earlier about how party lines wouldn't matter as much, but that Part J Sung did like about 6 or 7 large events, and what do you call it? The Labour candidate didn't do as many. I'm not saying they didn't campaign; they didn't do as many, and they didn't win. So that's just showing that the overall party vote can actually, your party lines can actually do quite a lot when it comes to this election.
Yes, indeed.
That's quite interesting.
I mean, perhaps what we'll see is not just a one-size-fits-all in terms of party loyalty, but we'll see it varying depending on constituency. More persuasive, more charismatic, more active candidates may perhaps buck the trend.
Well, I'd like to extend my congratulations firstly to Horizon for winning their seat in Southwest London. They've been a great asset to Model London, and also, of course, to the Labour Party leader, Nuke Mouse, who the Scalsters have really turned out to vote for them, and I'm happy to see them win.
I'm just finding out now that that was done on, I believe, 38% turnout in Merseyside.
38%.
Yes, we are seeing some painfully low turnouts so far in some constituencies. It seems that it's very, very dependent on the candidates in the campaign. There isn't an automatic desire with a lot of voters to turn out. They really do seem to be at a rest state of apathy.
I think this is a crisis. This could be seen as a crisis of confidence in the political system as a whole. 38%.
There's certainly. I mean, Merseyside hasn't always had the highest turnout, but this election we're certainly seeing more extreme results than we've seen in previous elections.
It's the Labour leader's seat as well.
True. You'd think it would be able to get a more of a grounding than that. 38.88% turnout. Sorry.
To be fair, I can understand if it's the Labour leader's seat. Nobody else is going to win it. So why should I turn out? But I suppose that's what the other party should have tapped into. The Labour leader. He's the Labour leader. He's not actually going to do anything for you.
That's a very good point, because we see 3 right-wing parties with about the same vote share here. The classical Liberals in the lead, and they've got about 11,000 over the Conservatives, who have about 3,000 over the NUP. I mean, even if they were together, it wouldn't be enough to oust him. But still, you would have thought there would be a lot more tactical voting and a lot more cooperation there.
Yeah, you would have thought that. But it's looking like a good night for Labour so far. Labour's in the lead, 5 seats. Yeah, so
it's important not to draw too many conclusions for that, because of course cities have less sort of open fields that the poor sixth formers have to run across, and that means that they'll be able to declare quicker. So,
speaking of declarations, we now have Manchester North and South East London.
You are a ninja, Rolo. You really are. Look at that.
Always
speed.
On the ball.
Yes, you are. Right, Manchester North, South East London. We should be returning very shortly. You are correct. And the results are in. In Manchester North, we are seeing the incumbent Snap Crackle managing to hold the seat with a significantly decreased majority. We're seeing quite a three-way race here against Secretary Salami of the Labour Party and Chaos Insignia of the NUP, with the Classical Liberal and Communist candidates very far behind, Communists receiving 6 votes here. In South East London, we're seeing Labour gain from the Greens in a constituency where they stood down to assist the Greens with their vote share. We are seeing that against the NUP. It looks to be fairly high turnout. We'll double check that. The NUP's candidate, 141,000 votes behind, and with the Conservatives, Classical Liberals and the Anarchist candidate left in the dust. We're seeing for Communist spectrum ideals, it's not looking like a good night.
So just to give you the turnout figures, in South East London, there is a turnout of 46%, And then in Manchester North, we have a turnout of 59%.
Yes, it's interesting what Toast was saying about a possible crisis in confidence of how our election system works. I mean, perhaps that's the case, or perhaps it's simply that people felt unengaged. Maybe it was raining on Thursday night.
It seems to be raining in some very specific boundaries.
The rain clouds, they form a wall around the constituency of Tyne and Wear. So inside Tyne and Wear, it's perfectly sunny. Everywhere around, exactly on the boundaries, it's raining.
It seems in this case, the rain has formed a wall around the anarchists' houses because.
Oh dear! No, maybe it's rained so much they can't get out. They're stuck inside.
So to speak about the Manchester North result, Manchester is typically quite a marginal seat between sort of the far right. The National Union is sort of your white collar, very working class, pro Brexit sort of vote, and then on you also have the far left sort of Labour, Green, former radical vote, and this doesn't seem to have happened in Manchester North. The NUP and Labour are certainly very close. There's only about 5,000 votes between them, but the Liberal Democrats managing to just hold on is quite a surprise result. Even though it's a incumbent MP, he was elected last time on a Christian Workers' Party name supported by the Greens, the Radical Socialists, even the Liberal Democrats, and it's to see the Lib Dems do that well in Manchester North is certainly a surprise. And also, the former Liberal Democrat George W.B. winning Manchester South. So if it hadn't been for that defection, perhaps. But anyway, certainly a very centre ground Manchester, which is very different from what we've seen previously.
If I could just say a couple of things, Nuke, if I may.
Yes, go on.
I've heard rumblings from inside Conservative HQ. Conservative HQ are not pleased with the result in Leeds and Wakefield. They're not happy with that result, and I think not going to be searching for a recount because the majority was so much, but they're displeased with that, and I'm hearing they're hoping that result doesn't continue throughout the night because they thought they were going to win. They thought they were going to win, or at least do closer in Leeds and Wakefield, but unfortunately that hasn't happened.
Have you bugged Conservative Party HQ?
I have a lot of feelers, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and I'm making sure that our results pop and the public know what's going on.
Are these made in a spyware factory?
The Conservative Party, of course, tends to have very extreme opinions when it comes to the holding of elections.
Conservative has very conservative party opinions.
That's true.
May I also point out that the Libertarian Party, and in fact the Classical Liberals in one place, and I don't want to. This is not a call on the Classical Liberals in any respect, but you had 10% of the vote overall, but 10% of the vote overall, but dropped down to 200 votes.
So
seat.
Our next result, which should be a little bit of encouragement for the Conservative Party, we have Essex, and we also have East London.
We do indeed, and we're also East London will complete the London list. We'll be able to report on that. Now, just
to clarify there, we have now got all the results counted from all the constituencies in London, and as well as the regional vote. However, just to remind viewers, voters do have two ballots. They have two votes when they go to the polling booth. So they have their constituency vote, and they also have their regional vote. So the regional vote isn't necessarily just adding up all of the constituency votes together. They may be different.
Quite right. Thank you. Now, as I was saying, in Essex, we've seen Labour gain from the Conservatives dropping to third place in what is a very interesting race here. We're seeing that the Labour majority is very small, 9,317. So potentially oustable by some kind of, even just if the NUP, the NUP couldn't do it, but if the LP UK had have endorsed the Classical Liberals here, it's very possible this would have been a Classical Liberal seat. Now, moving on, in East London, we're seeing the Greens have gained from the Conservatives here. Now, it's interesting to note that actually in terms of vote share, they have roughly stood still. They've actually dropped about 4,000 votes here, but the Conservative candidate has lost considerable votes, dropped considerably, and so the Greens have stood about still and have won because of that. Now, on the London list, the constituency results were 3 for Labour, 1 for the Conservatives, 1 for Greens, and 1 for the Liberal Democrats. And so, proportionally allocated it based on the constituency results to give a best possible spread. The Conservatives have picked up 2 further list results to add to 3 seats for London. Classical Liberals have picked up 1. The Liberal Democrats have picked up 1. The Greens have picked up 1, and the NUP have picked up 1.
So I suppose the Conservatives have to be reasonably happy that they've held ground in London. They've got 3 seats in London, but I was mentioning Essex, expecting it to be a sure win for the Conservatives to provide them with some sort of relief, but for them to drop to 3rd in Essex, that's one hell of a shock.
And just to demonstrate just how big an impact it's possible to have with electoral pacts, that would be a classical Liberal seat if the LP UK, or indeed it could be an LP UK seat if the classical Liberals have endorsed them there. You know, that was very possible to swing.
That's a massive decline, because Essex should be the sort of seat that the Conservatives can depend upon on hell and high water. You'd expect to be able to pin a blue ribbon on a donkey and to get elected. So this is looking like a very, very sad night for the Conservative Party.
Yes, could it perhaps be that the Conservatives, what they traditionally think of as safe seats, could in fact be a lot less safe than they're expecting, and that could upset their whole strategy?
Potentially, but then also you have to look at some of the other seats where they're expecting to not do well, and they haven't done well. So they haven't been compensated in other seats they weren't expecting. They just seem to be doing badly across the board. Although, to be fair to them, we are seeing mainly urban constituencies so far.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's even in the past we've seen a trend where the Conservative vote tends to be slightly higher in later seats, but even if it is slightly higher in later seats tonight, going on that trend, I mean, we're seeing a pitiful result for them. Just
if I can point out, in the YouGov poll, we weren't holding that Labour seat, so that London seat. The Conservatives weren't holding that London seat, so.
But surely they would have been expected to hold the Essex seat.
I don't know if we were predicted to hold the Essex seat, but
London isn't a surprise. The surprising seat is Essex.
Is the Essex one? It is the surprising seat, and I'm hearing from inside Lib Dem HQ currently, from one of my sources, a senior official in Lib Dem HQ, that the Lib Dems are feeling confident, and it looks like it's going to be a very good night, and they're saying they believe it's going to be a very good night for them.
Rick's position seems very assured after this election, in a way that Leafy Emeralds, I suppose, isn't now.
Well, I've
heard a mention also, just getting it relayed now, that every single constituency in London has changed hands. And just to speak about constituencies, we now go to the declarations of Nottinghamshire, Clydeside, and sorry, it's smudged handwriting. Derbyshire. Derbyshire. That's right.
However you pronounce it.
It's pronounced Derbyshire by everyone. We're just going to go to
the. In Nottinghamshire, we're seeing the Liberal Democrats managing to gain the seat from the Conservative incumbent Lieutenant Capstan. We've seen Disclosed Oak pick up the seat with a narrow margin of just shy of 8,000. In Clydeside, we're seeing Labour gain from the Green Party. The Greens have dropped to 3rd place. This is a very close call between Labour Party's VMK and an independent candidate, XC 189725PU. So this is a very, very interesting. This is very strong showing here. Very, very close to securing a seat. Perhaps, if it is that XC support isn't purely a local issue, it could possibly be that he could pick up a list seat in the region.
Has XC left the communists to get rid of that? Well,
they no longer functionally exist. He's a pure independent.
That's what I mean. They disabled the communists so he can get rid of the shackles of 2% of the vote or 1% of the vote, and move into an independent candidate.
Yeah, well, perhaps he has. Now, in Derbyshire, we see the Conservatives holding on to their seat with a stonking majority of 208,726 votes, with the closest competitor being Labour at 43,200. They've been left in the dust here.
That's shocking. It really is. Is that a high turnout? I don't think that's a high turnout.
For which seat?
Which seat? Is
Derbyshire.
Derbyshire. I'll look out for it now. The turnout in Derbyshire is 44%. So reasonably low. I mean, with the majority of seats we've seen so far, the turnout has been under 50%. We're seeing very low turnout. And apart from some exceptional constituencies such as Tyne and Wear.
Yes, perhaps it could be the continuing trend of the evening that turnout is quite low across the board.
I've just heard that Liberal. I've spoken to somebody in the Libertarian Party HQ. They aren't happy with the results so far, but they're predicting between 3 to 6 seats afterwards. At the end of the night, they reckon they'll have between 3 to 6 seats.
Well, we shall watch out and see what they do.
Just to bring on...
I'm not partisan, I'm just saying that's what one's quote. That's a quote.
Just to bring in a guest, we have... Oh no, we don't, never mind. Oh wait, Snapcrackle, can we bring him in? So just to bring in our guest now, we have Snapcrackle, who is the winner of Manchester North. Congratulations.
Well, perhaps we can't bring him in.
Is he stuck in the door as well?
Yeah. The trouble is, it's one of those fancy security doors, and it's got like a big kind of bulkhead. And the idea is, in case someone tries to kidnap us. So it's really tricky to get in. You have to know the code. You've got to have the key. You've got to have like one of those little eye picture things and a palm print. It's very high tech. We've spent exorbitant amounts of money on it.
If you know that scene from The Thick of It, where they have Conservatives and the Labour press officers in Radio 5 Live studio, it's pretty much like that. But anyway, we do also have in the studio Disclosed Oak, a Liberal Democrat, former Green Principal Speaker. Good evening, Oak.
Howdy.
How are you doing tonight?
Exorbitant.
Exorbitant? Is that the mood of the Liberal Democrats in general?
Yeah, I think we're set for decent gains, I think. And if the night keeps going the way it is, I think it's going to be a good night for the Liberal Democrats overall.
And what do you take on your constituency where you stood?
I'm generally surprised I won, though the campaign from the other parties was minimal at best, but it was still, I'm still very shocked.
I see. Well, let's see if we can surprise you again. We are now going to Glamorgan and Gwent and Lincolnshire. Now, let's see how we do here. So in Glamorgan and Gwent, we've seen the Plaid Cymru take the seat from the Greens, where the Greens stood down to endorse them here, beating off the Labour challenger with a majority of 87,724 votes. Now, in Lincolnshire, we're seeing the Conservatives hold on to their seat, beating off the nearest challenger being Labour, beating the NUP, with a majority of 72,448.
Even though it's on a turnout of 36%, that's got to be some hope, a glimmer of hope for the Conservatives there.
Yes, perhaps I can offer a theory as to why turnout is so low.
Oh, do please.
Now, what we're seeing is quite a lot of parties using endorsements to try and top each other up, which is normal party procedure. But perhaps it could be that the more that happens, the less motivated people feel to turn out. Because if the Greens, for example, endorse the Liberal Democrats, let's say, which is possible, they did that in Scotland, in the Holyrood, then what you might say is there'll be Green voters who will think, hang on, The Liberal Democrats don't speak for me, and my candidate, the one I want to vote for, isn't here. I'm just not going to bother. Perhaps that's what it is. Perhaps it's that the system of electoral pacts is so ubiquitous that it's people are just saying, well, why should I bother? The candidate I want isn't standing.
Quite possibly. I mean, electoral pacts don't seem to have nearly as much strength as they did at the last election. Also, just to say, Liberal Democrats in Glamorgan and Gwent certainly doing much better than previous election. Very narrowly behind Labour. You have to congratulate Victor HR from Plaid Cymru, but it does beg the question. The Greens held this seat by quite a significant margin. Why did the Greens just give that up and hand it to Plaid Cymru?
Perhaps.
Go on. Sorry,
please go on.
Makes you wonder, like, it's been interesting choices about where the Greens are standing, who's standing, and where. You have to wonder what they made their decisions on, and that's literally just. I have to wonder what their process was. Was it that they let people stand where they wanted to stand, or did they make some actual political decision?
Perhaps there's a logic to specifically
Glamorgan
and Gwent in that with supporting Plaid Cymru, it's a party that is quite likely to support them should they try and put together a government. Although quite why they would support Plaid Cymru to the extent of giving up a seat is very interesting. Whether they felt perhaps that their support there had dwindled, perhaps they thought that it wasn't sustainable, perhaps they felt they didn't have the resources. But it seems like a very interesting choice when they were willing to campaign in places where they were completely annihilated.
May I point out as well that the BitSec just lost their seat. They just lost their seat.
Where was that?
Dickie Nee was lost to Unexpected Hippo, the NUP, but he was the bit secretary. So I mean, I suppose when you have two cabinet ministers fighting it out, one of them's got to lose. But I thought it'd be interesting for the voters and the watchers to know that.
It's the BIT curse.
36% turnout. That is just astounding.
Yes, there's certainly a trend occurring here of quite low turnouts. Let's hope that perhaps this bucks the trend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. Now, let's go back to what we were told by Toast's bugging, as it were. That the Libertarians expect 3 to 6 seats. I'd like to hear the panel's thoughts on that. Is that feasible?
It's feasible. I wouldn't go as high as 6. I'd say 3, even hoping for 3 seats, would be a good aim for the Libertarian Party this time around. I mean, this is their inaugural election, to be fair, so...
Perhaps, but at the same time, perhaps this is a perfect storm for them, because what we're seeing is extremely low turnout, and this means that it's the perfect conditions for a new party to engage, because the turnout may be indicative of a lack of political engagement with the existing political options. So perhaps this is the perfect moment.
Anyway, before
you'd think that, but
before you move on, I'd just like to pass over. I'd just like to pass over to my co-host Trevism, who is going to be taking the results further from now. So I'm going to go away for a bit, but
we're releasing Rolo into the wild.
Best of luck with the rest of it. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Rolo. Can I just briefly say that I think
we need to go on to the declaration, I'm afraid. We have South Yorkshire and Northamptonshire and Rutland coming in. Now, in South Yorkshire, the Greens have managed to hold their seat with a majority of 63,506 versus the Conservative candidate Caffeine Introvert coming in second place. And in Northamptonshire and Rutland, which is the constituency of the incumbent Prime Minister, Leafy Emerald, we're seeing it being held with a significant showing of 108,249 of the majority, which puts Labour in second place, and the NUP and LP UK annihilated here in terms of vote share. This is not a fun seat for them, we could say.
I mean, obviously, Northamptonshire and Rutland should be one of the safest seats in the country, being the Prime Minister's seat, and it's shown here that Leafy Emerald's majority is practically the same as his nearest challenger, and the NUP vote and the LPUK vote is the most minimal it could possibly be.
Yes, that is quite.
Don't say that, Trev. We saw 3 votes for the Communist Party earlier.
So what, do you think Conservatives might get 3 votes somewhere?
Oh, no.
I wouldn't go.
There's losing your deposit, and then there's 3 votes.
I've heard from the Green Party, so one of the allocators from the Green Party, and they've said that there were family issues for the candidate in Wales, so they moved house. Therefore, they didn't want to stand there, which is a completely understandable issue, which is a completely understandable reason.
Yes, often there are human reasons behind seemingly illogical decisions. That's certainly a fair point.
I mean, if you look at them tallies so far, I mean, the Conservatives started out a little bit poorly with the seat totals, but they're starting to make ground a bit, and it's certainly looking like the tide may be turning at this point in the night.
Yeah, but it's important to, of course, recognise that most of the early seats that are declared are always city seats, and they tend to be more left-wing, they tend to be more middle class. So to take them as a sample of the country as a whole is very dangerous.
Oh, of course, without a doubt. I mean,
all they can really do is be a bellwether for how left-wing parties are going to do. So, for example, judging them as a bellwether for the Greens and how they did because of their poor initial showing could be one interpretation. Although the Greens are starting to make some ground back. They've got 4 seats so far, so that's not doing too badly for them.
I mean,
can we all point out? Oh, sorry.
Admittedly, the next couple of seats, there's not really any key seats coming up in the count, judging by where other seats are at. Obviously, we've got West Yorkshire's potentially on the way, and that's where
Kent is a very key seat. That's a very key one.
Obviously, where Harry Grimm, the former Conservative Party chairman, stands, and Labour put in a late substitute, did a bit of last-minute campaigning. Then you've got Leicestershire, which was formerly held by the former Lord Speaker Goodish Bulldog, who stood elsewhere. Eddie B23 standing there, and another former Chancellor of the Exchequer is standing there for Labour as a potential challenge, and there's been very little campaigning in the constituency there as well. So, I mean, in terms of seats, the next couple, you're not going to really see much from them. Potentially low turnout, as we've seen across the board, and I dare say we're not going to have a clue about what's going on for a fair bit yet tonight.
You said earlier that it's just the perfect storm for the LPUK, but it hasn't come out that way.
Well, they've been having very, very strong showings in constituencies. Not taking them outright, that's certainly true. But if they can establish themselves significantly, they could go down the classical Liberal route. For example, the classical Liberals have 8 seats right now, 7 of which are list seats. Now, I'm not saying that the LPUK will pick up 8 seats, but what I'm saying is that you don't need to win first-past-the-post seats to be a significant force in a coming parliament. And in a parliament that's more hung than ever, then what we have to think about is that it's very possible that even a small block of LPUK seats could be a big force in a coming parliament. If they are the kingmakers, then that won't just mean they'll cement themselves for this election, but it may mean they'll cement themselves for many elections to come.
I have no doubt that LPUK is being treated by the government parties like Mr. Farage was in the 2010 election, as somebody who they just didn't want to have to deal with, and didn't want to have to have there to muck up their plans in government. So I'd say that's what the major parties are feeling, or are thinking of the LPUK tonight.
Thank you very much for that take. Now, we will be going to our next declarations. West Yorkshire and Leicestershire are declaring, and this will mean that the East Midlands will now be completely counted, and we may determine the list from there. Now, in West Yorkshire, we see that the Labour Party has gained from the Conservatives. We were talking earlier, I believe, about Harry Grimm. He has dropped significantly in vote share here, and the Conservatives have gone down to 3rd place. And we see LPUK in 2nd place, quite a close chase, 9,399 votes in it. That's enough, potentially, for example, a classical Liberal endorsement to swing it here. Now, moving on to Leicestershire, we are seeing a Conservative hold. The Conservatives have managed to hold on to the seat, seeing off Labour challenger Lenin Bread and NUP My Wog Out, with a majority of 15,000. And that means that we are now able to return the East Midlands list result. We have seen 4 constituencies turn for the Conservatives in the East Midlands and 1 for the Liberal Democrats. Based on the list ballot, we can then allocate a seat to the Labour Party, the National Unionist Party, and the Classical Liberals.
Those are some very interesting set of results. It's pretty much a clean sweep in Leicestershire for the Conservatives. They've taken the mandate that they gave to the former Lord Speaker last time out, and they've given it to a new candidate.
Well, you say that, but in Leicestershire, it was very low turnout, 29.5%. This is very low turnout indeed.
The question is, where do you think that comes from? Is it apathy, voter apathy, and that they think that political figures aren't doing what they should be, or is it apathy where they're happy with what political figures are doing and they don't really want to exercise the right to vote, which is then affecting the final outcome?
That's very interesting. I don't think so. Seeing as the Conservatives drop in points after the budget, if the Conservative government had the same number of seats as it did beforehand, I would agree with you, but I don't know. They've just simply lost quite a few seats. Well, it looks like they're going to lose quite a few seats.
I mean, obviously, as a Conservative member yourself, where do you think that significant drop at this point in that has come from? Can you really evaluate that at this point, or
I'm apolitical in my role. I'm apolitical in my role, and in my apolitical role, it looks somewhat like budget has hurt the Conservatives, but I haven't spoken to people inside Conservative Party HQ about what they think is going on, but I will speak to people now and try to understand what's actually happening there.
It's very important to remind everyone here that all of the people in the panel have promised to do their absolute best to be non-partisan, and they're doing very well at it so far. They're holding their tongues as much as they can. So try not to think that because Toasting Russian is a member of the Conservative Party that he's speaking for the Conservative Party. He's promised to be a very good boy and remain impartial.
I had to tell that to one of my close friends. Repeated occasions tonight. I point out also that the Liberal Democrats, any seat they get from now on, that's basically gain. Any seat from now on.
How do you mean?
Because they had four overhangs last term, and what, 8 seats, or was it 9?
Was it 9?
I think it was 9.
No,
basically
there were. I think there was 9 in total, and they had 2.
No,
I'm not sure.
They had 4. They definitely had 4 overhangs.
Oh, I'm getting Labour and the Lib Dems confused here.
Seeing as the Electoral Commission has removed overhangs, it's any seat they get from now on. That's pretty good for the Liberal Democrats.
So it's a question. It's a question of growth.
Okay, so I'm hearing from in the Conservative Party that they are very happy about the Midlands engine. One of the candidates has specifically sent me a text message just containing the words Midlands engine. So
it seems to be a real heartland for the Conservatives, and it's somewhere where they potentially could build from at this term to. It could really be a key maker for the Conservatives.
Well, while we're talking about key makers of the Conservatives, we're going to go to an interesting constituency on that very topic, because we are going to be looking at Black Country, Surrey and Cambridgeshire. Now, Cambridgeshire is one to watch, and we shall see it in a moment. Now, in the Black Country, we're seeing the Conservatives hold against Labour's Jake X Box with a majority of 10,000. In Surrey, we are also seeing a Conservative hold with a majority of 48,624. And here we're seeing the LP UK do fairly well, coming in second place with their candidate Kafula is Cool at 107,000 votes there. And in Cambridgeshire, we're seeing the Conservatives gain from the Liberal Democrats. Now, this was one of the Liberal Democrat marginals. And the Conservatives have managed to secure this with their candidates managing to displace the Liberal Democrats E. Whittington, with the 3 other parties standing completely in the dust.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, you've got to comment there. Cambridgeshire was a fairly controversial seat last time. There was obviously a very heated battle between the former Liberal Democrat leader, the Chatty Shaw, and the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Purple Slug. And the Chatty Shaw just about took it there, and I think the Conservatives, they've took it back this term. The Lib Dems have put another candidate in there, but the Conservatives have put somebody in there who's been active both in the Stormont Assembly, in the House of Commons, and generally as a backbencher. They've made themselves quite a name, and I think that a majority of 44,000 is fairly good at that level.
He's new in the Conservative. He's a new and upcoming figure in the Conservative Party. He'll do well. He was age 99.
We would do well to watch his career with some interest then.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd also like to comment on Black Country. There's only 10,000 in that one. In that it's a Conservative seat anyway. They were standing against the NUP Justice Secretary, Santa Fanson, and who didn't even manage to finish second. I think they got, how many votes was it there? A couple of thousand? I think you can remind me of that.
No, we've moved on now. We can't go back. There is no going back with the mBBC.
Can I comment on the Liberal Party, the Libertarian Party there?
Please do.
That's quite an
of course,
quite an interesting result, and commiserations to Cthulhu is cool because I think he expected to win that, or if he didn't expect to win that, probably he's a key member in that party, so I think they won't be happy with that result. So commiserations to them. But that's interesting because you see Rod BBB get 475 votes and won, and yet the constituency, the other constituency, 100,000. So I don't know what the voters are thinking, constituency to constituency, LP UK. It's a very interesting case study.
Well, what we're seeing is it's important to remember the Libertarians are an independent grouping. They're not a party, so they are a coalition of independent candidates who work together and stand under a common banner. So it's not unexpected, I suppose, to see that on a constituency level, it's a very variable result. They don't have a large reputation like, for example, in Cambridgeshire, the Conservatives or the Liberal Democrats to fall back on. So it's purely, or at least partially purely, on the candidate in question. So what you have to consider here is that perhaps the Libertarians are going to be more driven by their local reputation than they are by their national representation.
Yeah, no, that's saying the Libertarian parties are saying that they are disappointed with the results, but they're looking forward to seeing less seats, and that's probably a fair assumption because the Libertarian Party, they did 100,000 votes. That's quite.
Yes, it is very possible. And it's also important to remember that because they're a grouping, they don't stand as a sort of like a party on a list level. The seat doesn't belong to the LP UK. It belongs to whoever they've put up for the list there. So it's very possible that with that specific example, if Cthulhu is cool, his popularity there can carry over, and it may be that he is able to boost their list profile.
We might see Cthulhu, and it will be an interesting result if we see Cthulhu in Westminster and yet not Friedman Night.
It's important it's important to remember, though, of course, that they can't redistribute their seats in the way that a party can. The seats don't belong to the party; they belong to the individuals. So, also, it's quite important to remember that Friedman Knight will have to keep his MPs loyal, but he won't be able to exert a great deal of power on him because the ultimate threat for most parties is the free line whip, where you'll de-seat someone if they don't back you. If you try and de-seat someone, they'll just leave.
And yeah, that's so. Friedman, I'd like to know what Friedman is thinking at this point in time, but I believe he's confident in taking his seat.
Quite. Well, now we're moving on to our next declarations. Now, in Dorset and Humberside, we also have some news from Cumbria and Lancashire North. Now, in Dorset, we're seeing the Conservative candidate AIF 123 holds the seat, with showing the NUP in second place and the Libertarians in third place. Now, moving on to Humberside, we're seeing Labour have gained the seat from the Conservatives. We're seeing quite a limited standing here, with only 3 candidates standing. However, the Conservatives have dropped significantly to 3rd place behind the LP UK. Now, to give you some news from Cumbria and Lancashire North, a recount has been called there. The vote share was very close, and so it's been requested that there was a recount. We're going to find out who it was who requested the recount for you now. However, we're going to have to get the interns to check that out for us.
A great cheer just went up in Conservative HQ because this is the first time in the night, or just after the first time in the night, where it's a Conservative lead. So let's note that one. And congratulate all the candidates. Comrade Lannister, a real Kremlin bot, also doing quite well for the Libertarian Party. So
yeah, I can hear the champagne popping from here for Conservative HQ.
I don't know if it's Champers yet. Might be.
Is Champers reserved for 1984 style slides then?
It's still early in the night, so it's.
Perhaps Leafy will be the new Thatcher. Who knows?
I mean, I will comment that
Steinlike at the moment.
Dorset itself was a very, very hotly contested seat between If and the former Conservative chairman and the DEFRA secretary for the NUP, Jazz. It was obviously both two very fairly Conservative candidates, and If's done very well to hang on to a seat there by such a decent margin.
Yes, we can now tell you who called the recount. It was the Classical Liberals who called the recount in Cumbria and Lancashire North. Although we're told it was an extremely close showing. We don't know the exact numbers, I'm afraid, but it was a very close count.
Very interesting. Both candidates fought a hard campaign there. I don't think anybody would deny that one. Not at all.
I mean, you can only wonder how close that vote is if it's gone to a recount. It's pretty obviously that's pretty unprecedented in elections. You will always get a recount or two, especially with close votes. But it just goes to show how heavy that campaigning has been, and I think you've got to wait and see whether it's energised people or whether they've turned off.
Yes, although it's hardly.
Do you guys reckon that campaigning by Callum in that seat actually held off prevented the Dunks from doing things elsewhere, or is that?
I think you've got to say that, because you think the initial couple of days, the Classical Liberals had a very, very focused national campaign, and then obviously the whole Dunks Watch campaign, which was fairly effective because it kept Dunks in the constituency for the rest of the campaign. But obviously, I think you've got to consider as well that it was a very, very targeted campaign by both sides. And Dunks 11 obviously did the whole Yorkshire Dales carpetbagger football event where he literally kicked footballs across the Yorkshire Dales. You had the Cumbrian youth football game. You had the various references to carpetbaggers and whatnot. And on the other hand, you had Callum's campaign, which was very focused on where Dunks was, on the policies, on generally on what the Conservatives could provide different from Cumbria, because if you look over the years, Dunks has been a long-serving candidate in Cumbria. He's somewhere he classes as very much his home constituency. He has a lot of pride for it, and I think, to be honest with you, I think it's these sort of contests that make this house exactly what it is.
Yes, now talking of contests that perhaps make the House exactly what it is, we're going to go on to some more declarations. We have Cheshire and Lothian and Fife coming in. In Cheshire, the Conservatives have held the seat with the Conservative candidate Ninja Dragon seeing off Dr. 529 with a majority of 25,000. In Lothian and Fife, Labour have gained the seat from the Conservative Party, with Arthur Dent 24 picking up the seat from Dr. Lancelot with a majority of 37,315. And interestingly, the third candidate is the SNP's Answer Me Now 1, who there's about 1,000 votes, give or take, in the gap between the SNP and the Conservatives. And again, we're seeing the communist sort of spectrum of ideologies do very poorly with 3 votes once again. Perhaps the candidate, his mother and his father.
That is it's very telling that tonight with the Anarchist Front and the Communist Party, where radical left parties have failed to energise their voters. And obviously, you're looking at that constituency there. Dr. Lancelot, the Conservative Scottish leader. You've got Anthony now, who's a fairly prominent SNP member, who's managed to campaign well enough to get within 1,000 votes of the Scottish Tory leader. Very, very startling stuff.
Yeah, it is startling. I think one would expect the Conservative Party leader to do well, but let's also remember it's early in the night and list seats are yet to come out. So,
yes,
list
seats could be the great rebalancer, because we tend to see that
They will
Labour
be.
and the Conservatives, but Labour historically not so much. We're seeing this time it's a very different trend, because Labour has traditionally been a list-reliant party, where they've had a lot of list seats, and in here we're seeing that more are going to Labour, but it does look, with 13 and 12 respectively, Conservative and Labour on mostly first past the post, that it's a very two-way system, which is generally what first past the post tends to create.
Oh, without a doubt.
LPUK. I've been told LPUK internally predicts 2 seats in Yorkshire and Humber.
Well, we
That's
should
what I've
see
heard.
if that plays out.
We're going to have to. I mean, at this point in the night, it's a very, very disappointing night for the fledgling party. I mean, obviously, they prided a lot of their campaigning on de-seating the socialist consensus, as they called it, between the Conservatives and Labour.
Well, you'll have to wait and see, because list seats tends to be with small parties where they really come into effect, and we haven't had that many in the way of lists.
Oh no,
Well,
no.
We've had London where they haven't stood at all. So that's obviously they got no seats there because they weren't standing there, I presume because of limited resources. So I would say wait and see.
I mean, obviously, I think there's 2 very key seats for the LPUK at this point. You've got Stanlam's seat, which you'll have to remind me where it is, and then you've got Somerset and Bristol, where Friedman Knight stood against a Conservative candidate and was very, very hard in campaigning, very critical.
I think it'll be very, very interesting seeing what the Libertarian Party comes up with. Well, not comes up with, but happens to get in the future.
I mean, I think quite a lot. A very simple thing you've got to consider is whether parties who don't perform as well will still be here this next election, because we all know how quickly politics moves and how quickly everything goes on, and it would be very surprising to see for any party to go an entire term without anything changing. And I think the LPUK would be the party who potentially may not pick so many first past the post seats, they may pick up a few list seats, whether they'll be willing to stick in it for the long haul.
If the LPUK doesn't win any seats, I assume they'll return back to the upper house. That's what I have no doubt that'll happen. That's what.
Yes, well, they are. I believe they have 2 people entitled to achievement lordships, or is it working peerage?
I think it's working
peerages. Yeah, they're definitely working peerages.
But nonetheless, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's very good to have different balances of power in the 2 houses, because that means that it's less likely for a double majority that lets people ram their plans through. But let's see what Lancashire and South think about the lower house specifically. We have the classical Liberals haven't got their way, and we're not voting on the upper house quite yet. We'll see how that goes for them in the future. Now, in Lancashire and South, we are seeing that the Conservatives have managed to hold on to their seat, with a Conservative candidate having a narrow majority of 5,189. Labour's C19JF in close pursuit, with MCR 3257 closely behind that. And the classical Liberal candidate, a very low turnout indeed, perhaps a product of tactical voting here. We're seeing 2,752. This is, of course, probably quite worrying for the classical Liberals, because this is directly next to the sort of crown jewel they're trying to defend here, Cumbria and Lancashire North.
I think it's actually possibly more disappointing for Labour. C19JF was the Shadow Defence Secretary, and now they've been... Pardon, sorry?
He's chief whip for the Labour Party as well, so he's a very, very key member at this point in time.
He's a key member, and he hasn't managed to gain the seat off Conservatives, who I dare say they thought they were going to get that one.
Yeah, and there's a very good turnout here as well. It's at least for the election so far as a precedent, it's at 59.83%. So 60%.
Isn't that shocking? That 59.83% is considered great turnout.
This is I'm very disappointed with some of the turnouts tonight. I mean, obviously you're not going to see perfect turnout across the board, but I think there have been a lot of constituencies where people have felt disenergised and they've not came out as you would expect them to. But obviously here, I mean, you've got to look at who's been there. The Education Secretary, Fawn Schmitzkin, a very promising young gun who's managed to come good, and he's just about taking a seat, a very key battleground seat for Labour.
Is it possible? Oh, sorry, Trev. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you go on.
Is it possible for us to go back and have a look at previous result? Actually, no, never mind.
We can't. But I can tell you what they are. I have two powerful weapons.
Interns for handing me that.
I have two powerful weapons at my disposal. I have a very good memory, and B, all of the results we've had so far written down on a piece of paper in front of me. So, what would you like to know?
I just wanted to see the result sheet, but I will be able to find it in.
Here, I'll pass it. I'll pass it over. Try not to ruffle it too much. The microphone might pick it up. Ignore the little doodle on the top right. Just pretend that's not there. It doesn't mean anything. Nothing dodgy going on, I promise. Not rigging any elections.
Oh, what?
Don't worry. You heard nothing. Don't worry. There you go. So what specifically are you interested in?
We have you handed it to me. I can't see it on my desk.
Well, open your eyes. It's in front of you. What do you need? Have you tried looking in the documents folder on the lemonade section of the desk? You know where we keep all the bottles of lemonade. Look in the documents. It's on the right.
I'm looking in the documents folder right now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you're blind. What do you need?
Thank you very much. I'm just slowly opening the folder. Slowly opening the folder.
Well, you don't want to get a paper cut. It's very dangerous. It's health and safety.
It is. We're very conscious of health and safety. How about we continue? Is there a declaration soon?
Well, we haven't got any in. I mean, it depends how quickly the sixth formers count it, doesn't it?
It does. They could be parliamentarians soon if they don't hurry up.
No doubt.
I think I've been told to say in the meantime of this that the Conservatives are singing Jerusalem and CCHQ. So
well, they have had the champers out, right? Should we? Are there any guests on the other side of our bulkhead, Trev? Is there anyone out there?
I don't think that.
I believe we can
stick your ear to the wall. You might just be able to hear them.
Yeah. Well, I believe we can bring in the No-Heart, the Liberal Democrat deputy leader. I'll just pull him in now.
Oh, be gentle with him. Be gentle with him. Don't pull him like that. Have a seat, No-Heart. I'm so sorry. No-Heart, have a seat. I'm so sorry. He shouldn't be pulling you around like that. It's very naughty. Well, thank you for joining us, even if it's slightly involuntary.
Hello?
Or perhaps not. Hello.
Hello.
Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Well, perhaps we can get a live reaction because we have results coming in from Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire and Norfolk and Suffolk. And we have also been able to complete the East of England list, so we'll be able to report on that. Now, in Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, we're seeing the Conservatives managed to hold the seat. Now, this graphic appears to have a minor error with it, and it shows the majority is much lower than it actually is. The majority is not 9,317. It's in fact significantly larger, as you can see on the right. But minor error aside, moving on, we see Norfolk and Suffolk has been gained from the Conservative Party. They've dropped to third place, with the Classical Liberals candidate C. Dockwra being the second place candidate in a very, very close race indeed. And now we have all of the East of England seats with what's its name? Norfolk and Suffolk We can declare that the Classical Liberals have gained 2 list seats, the Liberal Democrats 1, the Conservative Unionist 1, and the Libertarian Party, United Kingdom, have gained 1 seat here. So this is indeed confirmed. The Libertarians will have parliamentary representation come this Parliament.
So that's was cool as that will now be standing. We know he'll be sitting in the House.
I believe so, yes. He's been kicked downstairs rather than upstairs.
I would say that the Conservatives and in fact everybody will be happy about that one. The fact that it's Cthulhu is cool, not some of the other party members. I dare say it's less than what they predicted in East of England. The LPUK predicted in East of England, though.
Their estimates for what we've heard of have been. I don't know if it's confidence, if it's they feel they have grassroots support, but in my opinion, they seem to have been overestimating their strength throughout the night.
There's nothing wrong with a little confidence. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with confidence at all, no.
It's very good for you. You should always be positive and confident.
I've been told by one of the viewers who's angrily messaged me that we haven't focused on the NUP. And I think that's probably a fair comment.
Well, in all fairness, they've only gained 2 seats so far.
But however, they're also quite a farming or rural-centric kind of party, I'd say, with unknown user contesting Kent once again. But look at that map! Look at the map.
I shall say to Brenda in Blackpool, we hear your complaints. Just be patient. They're coming. Don't you worry.
On the topic of the NUP, I've just received a very alarming text message from a candidate.
Who's sending you hot takes?
Saying that 30% turnout is not what democracy looks like. These results are not those of a democratic system. Fundamental reform is needed. So, a lot of angry people in the NUP quarters tonight.
Well, maybe they just didn't bother to get their vote turnout, so I don't see why they're so upset.
We might see a vote put forward, or a bill put forward by the NUP or by some parties in Parliament next term to organise mandatory voting, and perhaps a democratic sausage sizzle and barbecue afterwards, like the Australians have.
I have no objections to the sausage sizzling barbecue, but I do wonder whether we might want to think carefully about compulsory voting.
Oh, I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying it might occur because this is a historically low turnout.
It's important to note that the NUP have never endorsed that party policy.
Absolutely.
Provisions to increase voter turnout have been tried, particularly in Australia, where there's I believe if you don't vote, I think it's very low, but it might be an option to encourage participation in our system, because this is unprecedentedly low turnout. It is.
We can't the issue is that you can't. It's a complex issue because you can't pay people to vote, because then it ends up being a race at the bottom on how much a party is going to promise to pay for your vote. So it's a really complex issue which we should think about carefully.
I will point out that we've got results coming through at the moment from Kent and Upper Severn.
Quite right. You're trying to take my job here. I'm not sure I
good
like
God,
this.
I'm late.
Oh, quick!
Oh, dear.
No, you're not at the count. You can't keep an eye on it. Well, don't worry, you've held it. Your majority has decreased, but it's still 120,000, which is still, if that's a decreased majority, just to show how historically safe Kent is for the Conservative Party, with Labour's Paula Rees behind quite a fair bit, and the Independent El Chapotato just behind that. We're seeing again quite a strong strength for the LP UK, 143,784 votes. Now in Upper Severn, this has gone less well for the Conservatives because Labour have gained Upper Severn from the Conservatives with a majority of 54,873.
Can I point out that El Chapotato, running mainly as a joke candidate, got 100,000 votes. That's quite an interesting, quite a show of what happened in Kent, isn't it, this election?
We couldn't ask you to comment too greatly on it. No. You
No,
might
I'm not
not
going
be
to
able to
comment.
restrain yourself.
I'm not going to comment any further.
I mean, I will say that it's still a very comfortable majority for the Conservatives. It's maybe a drop, but you're still well ahead of the pack. It's in that constituency. I think there's no chance that you'll be losing that anytime soon.
Yeah, well, we'd hope so. We'd hope so. But yeah, we'll see what happens this election and next term.
Yeah, it's
The interesting
certainly
Conservatives on 7.
it's certainly demonstrative of just how safe some seats are, that you can drop a fair bit and still have a majority of in excess of 100,000.
Can I just point out as well, though, that the vote for is unknown user 717, the former Justice Secretary, has absolutely plummeted this general election.
5,000 votes.
It's unbelievable.
Oh,
It's unbelievable when you consider how prominent he's been. Perhaps controversial over the last few terms, no doubt, but...
Whom was that we were referring to?
Unknown user.
Unknown user.
Justice for unknown user. It's terrible.
Absolutely. Absolutely
It's
madness.
shocking.
I mean, obviously, we've been told we haven't spoken about the NUP much, but I mean, you've got to look at that result and you think, my word, to say such a prominent NUP candidate has plummeted so much.
And that used to be. He had 100. He was only 100,000 votes behind me last time in Kent, and far out. He must have lost at least 95,000. But he might have had 200,000 votes. He's lost 190,000 votes in Kent. That's insane. Yeah, he's lost 190,000 votes.
Speaking of insanity, apparently I've heard in Tory HQ they are now not singing Jerusalem, but they're starting to sing to themselves while they rock themselves in the corner with their amount of seats they're losing right now.
Are you in Conservative HQ? I'm also in Conservative HQ. It's interesting. We must be on different sides of the...
You see, what the trouble is...
Peep glass looking in.
The trouble is the security for Conservative Party HQ isn't too good, so it was very easy for lots of people to bug them.
We're on different sides of the room. So,
maybe even different rooms. Who knows?
The Prime Minister is singing, things can only get better.
We can go live to his singing. Things can only get better, can only get better.
Quite impressive.
We have heard that the Labour Party is planning I apologise, not an opposition, a party bill to formally prescribe Lee Fee from ever singing. He has been threatened with a permanent ban.
They might need to pass a bill to be fair,
how abysmal that was. You may as well just paid someone to do the job for you.
No doubt.
No,
I've just got a bit of a comment there from unknown user there. The polls are rigged. That is a very, very.
That's certainly an interesting take from unknown user. We're always happy to.
I believe the results are in from Northumbria.
You are indeed correct. Could you stop mind reading, please? That's very
Get
disturbing.
off the result. Who let him on this side of the table? He's supposed to be on the
He's leaning
left
over
side.
our shoulder. Oh, that's very naughty.
Not in our job.
That's not on.
You are indeed correct. Northumbria as well as Oxfordshire and Berkshire have returned. Now, Northumbria has seen a classical Liberal gain. The classical Liberal candidate, Twisted Newt, See, I'm restraining myself here. Has gained these seats with a majority of 43,289, and he wants to squeal right now, beating out Conservative IFX 118846. In Oxfordshire and Berkshire, we have seen the Greens gain from the Conservatives, with Contraband, the MC, being able to... It's a very close race. The Green majority is 3,354. Labour and then the Conservatives have a gap of around 8,000 votes between them. And in the northeast, because of the classical Liberal taking of Northumbria and the Tyne we're initially being helped by the Greens, we can then allocate list seats to the Labour Party, to Conservatives and Unionists, and the National Unionist Party.
Elliot CC9 lost his seat. Didn't lose his seat, but he didn't win his seat. That's insane.
I mean, I'd also like to comment that I've just received a bit of news from Cumbria. There's in fact a second recount going on. Surprising scenes here.
Yes, we're informed that this one has been called by the Conservatives instead. We understand Inferno Plato. The first one was called by Dunks 11. The second one was called by Inferno Plato and his representatives. So clearly, it's not a done deal yet.
Very interesting.
This is very interesting.
One of the I've been written to by one of my sources in the LPUK. Cthulhu is cool. Will not be seen in Westminster in the list seat for the East of England. Morty Johnson will be seen instead.
No, I'm not familiar with him, but I'm sure he'll do a very good job.
That's quite interesting. You have to wonder why they've put Cthulhu there. Maybe they want him in the upper house, because I thought he's quite a prominent member. I thought he'd be excited to get back into Westminster.
Perhaps their strategy overall is to have a base in both houses, because it doesn't do them well to be completely outside of the House of Lords, because they'll want to have some representation there to push their ideas.
Yeah, that is interesting. Can I just again bring up that the leader of the Shadow Chancellor, and the deputy leader of the Labour Party, the Shadow Chancellor, and one of the most prominent members of the Labour Party has not gained his seat. That's the fact, and also, what does it say that the fact that person, like with all the credentials I just mentioned, tried to steal the seat off the leader of the Greens? Like, what does that say for inter-party relations in the?
If I remember rightly, I think both stood their last election as well.
They both have a history of running in that seat. They weren't purposefully running against each other, but it was a very.
So are we having whispering and note passing in the studio?
It was a very close result. No.
Yeah, you're right. It was close. Do you think there hasn't been a recount called yet? But
no, if there was to be a recount, it would have been.
Morty Johnson was the LPUK candidate for Essex, and Cthulhu was called as the candidate for the South East. I've got a comment coming in from an anonymous Green Party source, but it's yet to come in. So that's looking like a disappointing night for Labour there. It's a disappointing night in a shine of what is about to be a gain of seats.
I mean, I think you have to say, Contraband the MC must be over the moon with that, because I've known him for years to stand in that constituency, even when it was Thames Valley, and he's never won it before. He's stood in it, I think, for the last 6 or 7 terms, it must be at least. And I think this is the first time he's ever won the seat. So, 6th time lucky.
Labour will be hoping it's congratulations to him. Labour will be hoping they win some list seats tonight, so they can flick some off to the Shadow Chancellor.
No doubt. Although it is important to remember that it is possible, although very frowned upon,
I think we're about to be get a guest from a very special Cumbrian man. On the mBBC,
well, this very special Cumbrian man will have to control his excitement.
We actually have results out to...
Yes, we have some results coming. Our special Cumbrian man will have to hold himself steady. We have Buckinghamshire, Sussex, and Somerset and Bristol coming in. In Buckinghamshire, the Libertarians have gained a first-past-the-post seat, with the Libertarian candidate Stalinomics beating out James the XV, with a majority of 5,220. This is a Libertarian gain from the Conservatives. In Sussex, the so-called Sussex Saviour, WhatsApp 008, has retaken the seat with an extremely narrow majority. I believe that's the most narrow we've seen so far, of 475 votes. And we've gone backwards there, much like our politics.
Has there been a recount?
There has not been a recount, no.
I will make one comment from Sussex. To say it was a green seat won last time by WhatsApp 008.
Yes, it was. She has retaken her seat. Now, in Somerset and Bristol, the Conservatives managed to hold on to the seat with Friedmanite, the challenger here, against the Conservatives just below in second place, a majority of 16,411. So Friedmanite has not secured a seat here, although his party have secured a first-past-the-post seat. Now, those are the 3 seats we have to return for now. You may talk to your heart's desire.
That is ridiculous. I can't believe that. 600 votes. A Libertarian Party candidate winning, and Brighton Knight losing.
Yeah,
I
that was,
cannot
that wasn't,
imagine
that wasn't
the
just to
noise.
clarify. That wasn't 600 votes for the Libertarian candidate. That was for
No,
Labour's
600 vote
WhatsApp
majority,
008,
600 vote
so-called
majority.
Sussex Saviour.
Brighton Knight, the campaign the noise in Conservative Party HQ must be immense. The cheering, champers popping. I believe. I'm surprised that a recount hasn't been called in Sussex. I'm quite surprised about that
That is
one.
an interesting development. Now, we are joined in the studio, as you say, by one of the men from Cumbria. As I hope we are. Is he there?
I've let him in.
Come in. Have a seat. You need to come closer to the microphone.
Here he is. One of the men from Cumbria is here. The man from
Hello,
Cumbria.
Hello. Oh, you
Hello.
are here. We thought you were
Confirm
shy.
Plato.
Come closer. Hello.
Hello.
So, what's your take on recent events or the events of the night so far?
Okay, I thought you was going to ask me about Cumbria, but the night so far is, I think, pretty good for the Tories. If you look at our current seat total, I believe we're still we're higher than Labour, and it must be taken into consideration that at the very moment the Labour seats are being announced.
Yes, and in Cumbria, of course, you've had 2 recounts declared. One by Dunks, where you came out of a narrow lead, and one by you, where Dunks came out of a narrow lead.
Yeah, it's very close at the moment. We don't want to take anything for granted. It'll be a very close result.
So I won't try to sort of get you to pick and choose, as it were, who you think will win, because clearly this is going to be an extremely close seat in Cumbria. So we've had to have 2 recounts before we could settle it, whereas we could settle Sussex in no recounts.
Yes.
May I just quickly interrupt you, Inferno Plato? There was an angry Irishman banging on the door. He'd like to be let back in. I think Indigo Rolo would like to be let back in.
Did we not give him the key? Oh, I knew
No,
I
he's been
forgot
locked
to do
out.
something. I had a to-do list and I completely forgot. Now on other things,
Whoever in charge of doors at the mBBC needs to really get their game.
All right, no heart. No, that's fine, mate. The door's over there. That's cool. No, feel free to leave anytime.
Down boy. Hang on. Let's calm down. Let's have some nice, relaxing constituency results. Order. So going to Lanarkshire and the Borders, to Shropshire and Staffordshire, and the West Midlands list. We can see that in Lanarkshire and the Borders, the Conservatives in an extremely close seat here. I believe this is the second closest we've seen so far. The Conservatives have held against Labour's Will Shakespeare 99 with 884 vote gap, and the SNP in a very close second. So the Conservatives have 111,111 votes, which is quite an interesting number. With Will Shakespeare at 110,227, and the SNP's Delardy 0 at 106,302. Now, at Shropshire and Staffordshire, we have seen Labour has gained from the National Unionist Party. The National Unionists stood down here to endorse the Conservative candidate, N. Contas. But what we've seen here is that AKC8, former leader of the Labour Party, has come out with a win of 15,000.
This, of course, this shouldn't be a surprise.
Foreign Secretary losing his seat to, unbelievably, a man who launched and ended his campaign in a supermarket in a shopping trolley while throwing mustard at his constituents.
Well, that's certainly an interesting way of doing it.
To be fair to him, AKC8 is the former Labour leader, so he does have.
AKC8's.
Of course, we also can't forget the fact that he's also the outgoing shadow secretary of for Brexit. So
yes,
I don't think
it's one thing we can say.
I've just heard also, speaking of the shadow spokesman person, I'm hearing some comments on the Twitterverse drawing parallels between the economic spokesman not winning their seat with the previous result in Cambridgeshire, and they're now saying that Oxfordshire is the new Cambridgeshire.
I see. Now, it's also, I haven't had a moment to get in we have had the list results from West Midlands. Here in the West Midlands, as our viewers can see, there have been 3 Labour constituencies returning and 1 in favour of the Conservatives. The Conservatives have picked up 3 further list seats, bringing them to 4 seats in total in the region. and the Greens and the NUP have both picked up a single further seat. So, anyone have any further comments?
I believe some people are requesting, there have been slight requests for recounts, but unfortunately they've been denied. And also, I fear now that the spin doctor has arrived, I fear that Indigo Rollo is allowed back in the room. It might be my time to depart for the evening.
Oh dear. Try not to have too much champagne at Conservative Party headquarters. You might get a nasty surprise.
So thank you, everybody. I've really enjoyed coming on.
Thank you, Toast.
So everybody else, good luck for your constituencies. Bye.
Have fun.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Indigo, you're back.
Yes, hello.
Did you manage to get that copy of Private Eye?
Private Eye, I didn't, but I did manage to find a very good. I've brought in a chef to make vegetable curry for tonight, and he's in the studio with us, making vegetable curry, which is why you might be able to hear water bubbling away. How are we all? What have I missed since?
Well, apparently we've missed some very good cooking.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking here about some very, very interesting results.
Some very, very interesting results indeed.
Just to interrupt there, I'm gonna hopefully we tried to bring him on earlier, but Snapcrackle should hopefully be able to speak to us now if we can get him into the studio.
I understand he got lost in the maze of sort of trying to get to the studio. It's a bit confusingly laid out here.
Yeah. Well, if somebody can let him in now, just open the door.
Oh, you know what it is? The door's stuck again.
Absolutely.
I keep forgetting to oil the door.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, we've got him in.
I am fine. How are you?
Well,
I'll let you say it, Nick.
Yes, thank you. We're going to get into a nasty habit of talking over each other at this rate. So I can now take us to our next declaration. Hampshire North has declared, and that's completed the South East list. Now, in Hampshire North, Labour has gained very narrowly with Jelly Cow 99, having a majority of 6,733 over Vogon 101, the Conservative candidate, with the Classical Liberals and NUP considerably further behind. And this means now we've completed the list for the region. And so with one Green, one LP UK, two Conservative and two Labour constituency seats, this has meant that due to the list ballot and proportionality, two further list seats have been picked up by the Conservative and Unionist Party, one by the Classical Liberals, one by the Liberal Democrats, one by the Libertarian Party UK, and one by the National Unionist Party. That brings the Libertarians up to 3 seats. I
see the Libertarians have been doing really well with getting these lists.
Yes, they've certainly done better than some pundits had predicted. The NUP, what are our takes on the NUP so far for this evening?
Personally, I feel like they're not going to be doing too well this time around. Not as well as they did in the last general election, but definitely I can assume right off the bat that they're going to try and get into a coalition with the Conservatives, but with a significantly less amount of seats.
And what is your reading on why this has occurred? Is it the effect of smaller parties being blamed for government failings? Is it a rejection of their ideas? Is it a rejection of their term time performance? What do you think the causes are?
Well, the entire existence of the Libertarian Party, for example, was based off of Freddie Knight going away from the Tories, and he's essentially splitting the vote away from the Conservative Party towards his party. And I think some of the same things are happening with the National Unionists, is that in the first past the post elections, they are splitting away the Tory vote, causing the Tories and themselves to lose seats.
Without a doubt. I mean, I've got some very conflicting messages from NUP sent me all night, and I've got something here from another NUP candidate. I mean, God knows how I've got so many friends in the NUP, but I'll just grab this message for you.
Is this the eco-fash cabal in action? We hear often tell of it.
I dare say, but the comment itself, I mean, take from this what you will, I think it's rather mad. There is something deeply fishy and troubling about these elections. Some sort of commission should be established to investigate establishment interference in these elections.
Perhaps some kind
it's
of
absolute
electoral
madness
commission?
for a party who've been in government for the last 2 terms, and it's certainly not something that I'd expect from a Democratic candidate. I mean, it hinders the process entirely.
I see. And whom was that from?
I will point out for most of these results with the Tories, Classical Liberals, NUP, and Libertarian Party UK, what often is the case is those 4 parties split the vote, and it's often the case that either Labour or the Liberal Democrats will enter through the first past the post constituency seat. So what you could say is it's very much an example of the divided right splitting and allowing the left to get into power.
But isn't this in some way healthy for democracy? Because it tends to be that otherwise you get less people able to voice for the candidate they prefer. You generally see the right wing standing all. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to. I know you want to come in, but I'm going to have to move us on because we have results from North Yorkshire, Gloucestershire, and Wiltshire, and we can complete the Yorkshire list. Now, in North Yorkshire, Labour has gained from the Conservatives, ousting Crispy Toast 123 with a majority of 13,257, and the free vote curse continues with the Communist Spectrum candidate Butterlands getting free votes. In Gloucestershire and Wiltshire, we're seeing the Conservatives hold. There's a majority of 41,601. Got no real friends holding on there against Liberal Democrats in second and LP UK in third, with the NUP far behind in the dust. And now with North Yorkshire returned, we can declare Yorkshire and the Humber. 4 constituency results have gone to Labour, 1 to the Greens. This means that for list seats, we have 2 for the Conservative and Unionist Party, 1 for the Libertarian Party, who have now topped up to 4. We'd be very interested to hear from the Libertarians on who they intend to have submitted for their seats to be filled so far this evening. We'd be very interested to hear that.
You think they might have bitten off more than they could chew with this election?
What, the Libertarians?
Yeah.
Well, they've won a first past the post constituency. They've taken 3 list seats so far. I would say, considering that when the Classical Liberals began, that they took 1 first past the post seat as an independent grouping and then 8 as a full party, I would say that they are not off to a bad start at all based on precedent.
Yeah, I'd say that they're getting off on the right foot. Yeah. That they're getting off on the right foot in their inaugural elections.
Just to take us back, sorry, I missed a moment, but just to speak about the Yorkshire result, I think that's quite possibly one of the best examples we've had this election of electoral planning. Looking at the results, the Conservatives managed to get more votes on the regional list than the Labour Party did, and yet Labour, because they won 4 constituencies, managed to have double the number of seats that the Conservatives did, despite the Conservatives getting more votes. It's
yes, this is certainly an example of what could be considered.
I would actually disagree, because if we move back to the point which Twisted Newt was making about how competition is good for democracy, I would actually agree with him, and I think it's a good thing that there's 4 right-wing parties competing. The detriment is exactly what you've highlighted, in the fact that if you want a left-wing party, you have to vote Labour, apparently, because that's the way the endorsement systems have apparently been working in Yorkshire.
Yeah, there's certainly perverse incentive with the current system for parties.
No. I don't think it's endorsement related. I think it's just the fact that they've managed to edge out in front of their nearest competition.
Well, I do have a counterpoint to that. I do have a counterpoint to that, saying like endorsements, while this election they are much less influential, they are still everything in determining larger or smaller party success in the elections.
I mean, if we want to look at North Yorkshire, for example, since that's the most recent one, there's Labour, the Tories, Classical Liberals, NUP. Let's be honest, those are the 4 parties. The only reason why the Labour Party won that seat was because it has a small majority of 13k. Now, if the right wing had endorsed one another, they would have won that seat.
Yes. Now I can see through the window of our sturdy bulkhead that there is in fact one of the LP UK candidates outside. Kay Wilson. Is anyone able to get this blasted door open? Give me a hand of it.
Oh, why do we install a bulkhead?
Okay, we didn't think it through, all right? We were worried that someone would be very angry with the results and try and kill us. So we didn't really think it through. Indigo, can you get them in? Quickly, come through the door. Come through the door.
He's in.
Ah, there we go. That almost took your hand off there. You have to be careful with this door. It's a death trap. Yeah, we're going to have to get an old-fashioned wooden one, really.
Hello, Kay Wilson.
That's just going to be creaky.
Okay, Wilson, don't be shy. Hey, Wilson. No, I think he's a bit shy. We'll give him a moment to compose himself. Okay. Well,
I think he's
you
trying
have a
to
seat
speak.
then. We'll see if you fancy a chat. Snap Crackle.
Yes.
Now, going to the surprise win very early on the night for the Classical Liberals in managing to take, was it Manchester City in South? I believe it was.
Yeah, it was.
Does this encourage a culture of defection? As you've seen the candidate there defect from your party.
Well, I think that he defected mainly on frustrations he had with electoral strategy, and there are many frustrations that I shared with him. His main frustration was that Labour was running a paper candidate that had, simply because they were Labour, that they were winning against him, even though he was actively campaigning. And despite trying to get numerous endorsements from different parties and organizing all of these good things for the Liberal Democrats, it never ended up working out for him. And I was genuinely surprised when I got to see that even after he defected, he won his seat. Now,
I'm going to have to interrupt you there because I think we've got results coming through.
Yes, we do. We can update you on Cumbria as well, where Cumbria, a third recount has been called by both the Conservative Inferno Plato and the Classical Liberal Dunks 11. Now, we've also got results from North and Central Wales, which completes the Welsh region. In North and Central Wales, we see the Classical Liberals have gained, taking it from the Green Party, whose vote share, not to put too fine a point on it, has collapsed completely. Red Wolf 117 has taken the seat with a majority of 30,959 over the Liberal Democrats' Mr. Skit. And we're seeing the Green incumbent drop to 959 votes. Not high, there's no thousands in there, there's no zeros missing. 959 votes.
I think we could be seeing the beginning of the end of the Green Party, which is rather unfortunate to see. But
they haven't done too well at list level
reality.
either. The lists for Wales have returned with Plaid Cymru taking one seat at a constituency level, and the Classical Liberals at a constituency level. That leaves one for the Labour Party, one for the Liberal Democrats, and one for Plaid Cymru in Wales.
Well, I will just point out at this point of the night, the Celtic Coalition there. 3 seats already in this point of the night. You've still got another Scotland seat to claim, still at Northern Ireland to declare. Evidently a very, very good night for nationalist parties.
Yes, and talking of perhaps the opposite of national parties, we understand Kay Wilson's going to have another crack at it. So if we could let him back in. Kay Wilson, you there?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Of course.
Glad to hear you've worked up your courage. Now, what are your thoughts tonight?
Well, from our party's perspective, we've done very well. Stanonomics did very well in Buckinghamshire, and we've got 3 other list seats with still Northern Ireland to come. We're looking very good.
Yes.
Are you aware that like half your gains have resulted in what Labour getting into winning the seat rather than a right wing alternative?
At the minute, we're purely looking at this from an LP UK perspective. We've done well. We're on target for what we want. In fact, we've exceeded the lower end of our target. So as far as we're concerned, we're doing great.
Yes, and perhaps that's quite healthy for democracy, for to not see it as a right versus left, but as as a question of the performance of an individual party. Perhaps that's quite healthy for democracy, as opposed to the left, where they tend to unify, it seems, under Labour. Now let's talk about the left, because what we're seeing in the parliamentary arithmetic is that it could well, unless there is a swing in these last few lists, which is very possible, it could well be a Conservative government next. Will your party be working with them?
Our party are open to working with whoever comes and asks us. If the terms are right for us, we'll work with the Conservatives, we'll work with whoever.
I see. And what do you see as your red lines?
That's for us to discuss within the party as people come and ask us about joining them.
But ballpark?
Well, we campaigned on leaving the single market. We campaigned on Brexit, so they have to be protected. Also, we campaigned heavily on reducing sin taxes, which we will be making sure is part of any sort of agreement we have with anyone.
So sin taxes are the red line?
Not necessarily a red line, however, it will become a key part of our negotiating strategy.
We have another declaration.
We do indeed. This is the often talked about marginal, Cornwall and Devon, and that will complete the Southwest list, which I understand is one the Libertarians are watching quite closely. So, as we can see, the Liberal Democrats have held the seat. We are seeing this was formerly a Liberal Democrat Conservative marginal. The Conservatives have dropped to 4 out of 4 here, behind the LP UK, the NUP, and this has left Rick with a very safe seat, a majority of 143,758. So clearly the Conservatives have not done too well here. And now that the Southwest is complete, with 3 Conservative seats, 1 Liberal Democrat, we see the Libertarian Party United Kingdom pick up a list seat, the NUP pick up a list seat, the Classical Liberals pick up a list seat, and the Liberal Democrats pick up a list seat.
Good turnout for my party. Applause all around.
Yeah, I've just got to congratulate Enzo Taylor, our candidate for the Southwest list seat, on entering the House.
Of course, it must be noted that once again we see that example of the right wing splitting the vote and allowing the Liberal Democrats to win. Although, of course, we could see it the other way, where Labour, the Greens and other left wings sacrificed the choice and actually let the Liberal Democrats take it easily. So there was a lack of debate in that constituency, apparently, where there was no left-wing alternative, so to speak. There was definitely nobody in Cornwall and Devon advocating for a Ukraine model. There was nobody in Cornwall and Devon advocating for a UBS plus.
Oh, I think I can hear our chef in the background.
I think he can't be the best chef in the world. He's dropping everything. But
oh, that's very cheeky. It's very cheeky.
Was that my cheese and ham toasty that he's just dropped?
He's meant to be making a vegetable curry, so I'd be worried. It wouldn't even look like a ham and cheese toasty.
No, it's to dip in. You dip it into the curry. You use it to mop up the curry sauce. Don't
so
you know anything?
No, have you never taken naan bread and put it in the curry? That's what you're supposed to do.
It's not a toasty though, is it? Naan bread isn't a toasty.
No, naan bread is like the purest bread you can ever have.
What is your party's position on naan bread? Will you subsidise it?
Who, the LP UK?
No, I'm referring to Liberal Democrats. But what do the LP UK stand on naan bread? Is it important to your national strategy?
Not really. Toasties are more important to our strategy than naan bread.
I see.
For naan? Are you insane?
I didn't realise that naan bread inspired such passion.
I think I've missed something here. What's just happened?
There's a fine chef in the corner. You may have noticed him. He's the one who's filling this. He's making us very hungry. Can you not? I'm very hungry here. He's making us a nice vegetable curry with what appears to be a ham and cheese toasty coming alongside it. I think we've got a fuss pot in the room.
Oh dear.
We'll just wait around for the next results are coming now, and I think if our estimations are correct, it's going to be the one we've been waiting for all night. There's been several recounts. It probably
This is the fourth count it's been for this.
Fourth count.
Let's be honest, though. The general election isn't actually the story of tonight. The story we really want to hear about is the race in Cumbria.
Oh, for a lot of people, I think this is what the election was about.
I'm sure people have like thousands and thousands of pounds bet on this.
I do.
We hear that Dunks is sitting in the corner staring intensely at the sixth formers who are counting the vote, watching with beady eyes.
Have the bank tellers not turned up to Cumbria or something?
When do they ever?
They can't get through the roads.
I guess sixth formers are cheaper.
Yeah, well, they're also if they're under 18, I believe they have a sort of lower minimum wage. So maybe there's a strategy there. Maybe this is the impact of austerity. Oof.
Anyway, I mean, do any of our guests have
Here we go.
Oh, here we go. This is.
Now, I'm afraid there is an audio feed currently, but we can't get it, unfortunately, due to some technical issues. But it's being declared now. The returning officer there is apparently having to break an unprecedented scenario. He has had to flip a coin because this has been a draw. Both candidates have had 215,237 votes, with Bobby Bath behind. This is a majority of 0. There was a flip of the coin, Dunks called heads, and it was tails. So Inferno Plato has been elected on a coin flip.
You're joking.
Oh my god.
This is a 0 majority. This has not occurred since, I believe, 1886.
Well, there goes
This is unprecedented in modern electoral history. This is completely unprecedented. This completes the Northwest list.
I believe there's 90% turnout. It's remarkable.
Yes, this has completed the Northwest list, and the Labour Party has picked up 2 seats. The Classical Liberals have picked up a seat in the Northwest. The Greens have, as well as have the National Unionist Party. This is unprecedented, almost. 1886 was the last time there was a tie.
Wow.
This is quite remarkable. Just to confirm, for people who have just listened in, there was a tie in Cumbria and Lancashire North. A tie.
Well, I just lost a ton of money.
On a coin.
Same here.
Briefly from CCHQ and the Kitchens, as you may have heard earlier, No Classical Liberals is playing full volume, bass boosted, and the trap remix is going off at the intern's office as well.
I am in utter disbelief and in disappointment because I honestly thought Dunks would clinch it through, but all fought to
we understand some of his supporters are advocating digital currency as a response to this coin.
I will just say that the scenes at the vote count are absolute bedlam. It's been very hushed tones all night, as if something remarkable was happening. Now it's happened. It's absolute bedlam. I've never seen anything like this. Well, obviously we haven't in our lifetimes. It's mental.
A coin flip.
This is one hell of an unexpected result.
I never thought we'd ever have to talk about that in our lifetimes, but oh my word. I mean, to be honest, I don't really care about the rest of the election results. That's made it for me.
You're here first. Having 2 former prime ministers sit in a seat with mad campaigning, the results literally being too close to God.
Callum, can I just ask you how it feels to have been elected on a coin toss?
I feel very privileged that the fact that the Cumbrian and Lancashire North people place such a faith into myself, but also they
did not deserve this.
But also, if you look at the turnout, it's a fantastic turnout. It was a very democratic race, so to speak.
Well, Inferno, perhaps this is a comment on your monetary policy. Awful.
I mean,
this is what your taxes go to.
This election was really about local issues, and I dedicate my victory to the local people. And they're also my people now. I'm going to represent them as much as I can in Westminster, and I'm going to fight for them.
Well,
I'm very much going to be Cumbria and Lancashire North's man in Westminster.
Well,
the man cooking the vegetable curry has finished. So, would you like some vegetable curry?
I'll take.
Do we have naan bread?
We do have naan bread.
We subsidise naan bread using our funds.
I support subsidising the naan.
I'll dare to have some after the next vote, because for this vote, I'll end up relieving myself once more after it all. I mean, I can't. The hype for it is unbelievable.
Good grief. Yes, we understand there have already been allegations put out that there was in fact a mother who was a keen fan of anime who in fact pulled out a double-tailed coin in order to rig the vote. However, we do believe this is an unsubstantiated claim.
In all honesty, though, this loss is on Dunks because he should know that Tails never fails.
This is more for him. Now let's look to what is possibly one of the most fought about, perhaps, constituencies with individual parties all the time, and that is in Northern Ireland. Now, Northern Ireland is effectively a single member seat. Now, let's find out what the results are. We've seen that Sinn Féin have gained from the Ulster Unionist Party here, picking up the Irish first past the post seat with a majority of 111,488. And on the list, we're seeing that Sinn Féin have picked up a further list seat with the Ulster Unionist and Democratic Unionist Party pick up a seat.
Now, we haven't seen a party getting multiple seats.
I'm just going to say I'm going to have to give myself a couple of minutes to re-prepare because I'm going to bloody say, yeah, bloody hell.
Will you be calling for a border poll now, Trev?
Well, I think we'll have to. Well, that's what we stood on. We want the final installment deal on Brexit. We want to tear down peace walls. We want to end sectarianism. We want to make Northern Ireland a better place for all. And I think we've got the mandate to do it now. That's all I can say. I'm absolutely over the moon that I've been selected, and I'm absolutely over the moon that Spud has, because while there was only one constituency seat, Spud's campaigning out in Farmers Field literally was absolutely astounding.
Was he lost?
Oh well, yeah. His campaign advisors weren't the best. I had to palm me off with some of my old ones.
It's very generous of you.
Well, it certainly feels generous now after looking at that seat count. Well, I will commiserate the Uni candidate though, Kay Wilson. You did very well in your early campaign, and if I'm honest, you deserve to see it yourself. And it's very sad. It's very good to see such an active, such a decent campaign from all candidates with such little attacks on other candidates. It was a very clean campaign, and I'd just like to thank everybody who was involved in it. Really,
congratulations, Trevor Sim, for your for getting your seat, and Spud as well. I did actually at one point because of real life commitments, which is why my early campaign was stronger than my later campaign. But I'll be back. Don't worry.
He protect. Well done, he back. He protect. He attack. He make electoral comeback.
I'll never say
we'll
that
have to watch carefully.
Oh God, I mean.
But yeah, well done to Sinn Féin.
I'm just going to point out there: 2 seats from Clyde, 2 seats from Sinn Féin. The Celtic Coalition are here to stay, and we're not going anytime soon.
Very well done.
Yes, it will be interesting to see how the SNP do. They've shown a very strong third place, I believe, twice in constituencies in Scotland so far. So it'll be interesting to see if that carries forth to the list, because of course it is a 2-ballot system, so it may be they didn't get a single list vote. We'll have to see.
For Northern Ireland, I think I'd like to point out that there's only 4 seats to win in Northern Ireland, and it's very much the fact that Sinn Féin only won 2, whilst the UUP and the DUP also won 2 together. So although there's quite a lot of votes in it for Sinn Féin, overall it doesn't really matter how many votes if the seats available just allows you to if you can win 2 seats off 1,000, if you can win 2 seats based on like 200,000 votes, why do you need to campaign so hard as to win 400,000 votes in lists, but only get 2? You get the same result.
Now, here's an interesting point that hasn't been raised so far. Currently, the Conservative NUP potential coalition and the Traffic Light coalition are tied, both with 38. We've seen projections of a very hung parliament. Now, this does look like it will be a right-wing majority, but this is not going to be one that will simply be. It won't look like a majority. This is going to be a very hung parliament where, if there is a right-wing government, they will be very reliant on the classical liberals and the libertarians, and ditto for a left-wing government. Indeed, Inferno Plato, I believe you've raised the possibility of considering some form of grand coalition a la Germany, which, as we see, could command a majority. Could you elaborate?
Yes, I mean, I think it's quite clear that obviously at this point that it's going to be a very hung parliament. The Conservative NUP coalition is not going to command a majority. And the Con NUP and Classical Liberal coalition has been ruled out by the Classical Liberals. TLC doesn't have enough seats. I think there's a result coming through, so I'll let you take over.
Thank you very much. You're looking over my shoulder and looking at my screen. Oh dear. Yes, you are correct. Our final result for this evening is Highland and Grampian, which will fill in the Scottish list. In Highland and Grampian, the SNP have gained from the Conservative Party with a majority of 62,815. The Conservatives have dropped to third place behind the Liberal Democrat candidate, King Ethan 15. This completes the Scottish list. We see that additionally the Liberal Democrats, Green Party, Scottish National Party have picked up seats, as well as the independent XC189725 PU, which is quite a mouthful. He has managed to secure a list seat to make up for his not being able to win his constituency seat. I believe, was that Lothian?
Clydeside.
Ah, Clydeside.
You have to congratulate XC there, but also congratulate the SNP on not just managing to get 1 seat, but 2 seats. That puts the Celtic Coalition on 6 seats. That's fairly healthy.
Yeah, but we can now see the final composition of the Parliament. All of the seats have declared, all 100 seats. This is what this Parliament will look like. And we're seeing that the projections are true. This is an extremely hung Parliament. The current government will have a vote of 38. Now, previously, the government could command a majority if the classical liberals supported them. This is no longer true. With the classical liberals, they have 48. This would mean in order to command a majority here, they would need perhaps the Libertarians or the Liberal Democrats to support them. If it was the Libertarians, that would put them up to 53, Liberal Democrats 58. Now, looking at TLC, we see 22 for Labour, plus 10 for the Liberal Democrats, and 8 for the Greens. That leaves them at 40. Now, that's a long way behind. So the questions are, how could they effectively govern there? Now, assuming that the Nationalists, who have refused an explicit coalition, but assuming they may be persuaded to back them in some degree, because they tend to be quite left-wing. One of the things that's been talked about is a sunrise coalition of some kind. Now, if it would be possible for a Labour-led government to somehow play to the Greens and the classical liberals, perhaps by bringing the classical liberals into coalition, having some kind of deal with the Greens not fully in government, and then perhaps having the backing from some nationalist parties, they may be able to command a majority. Alternatively, as Inferno Plato suggested, there could be a grand coalition of the Conservatives or the Labour Party. That would produce 52 seats outright. There'd be no need for deals there, and arguably that could create a stabler government. Now, looking at the calls for Liberty Bloc to form some kind of force, we see that they are far behind being able to command a majority, with 25 votes in total. If they could perhaps agree some kind of deal with perhaps the Conservatives, then that could replace them. But that's hard to see working, because Liberty Bloc would have 25 seats, the Conservatives have 30, so the Conservatives would just be outright larger. So it seems unlikely that the Conservatives will be able, that the classical liberals, the Liberal Democrats and the LP UK will be able to form some kind of government there. As it stands, we can see the final results. Please do go on.
I'm just going to point out as well.
I was going to...
Trev, you go first.
The NUP leader has resigned. He's given a speech at the campaign. Let me just read this out to you.
Someone been betting.
I put I
These
put
results,
4,000 pounds
let
on
me
Rick
could I
resigning.
please speak, please? Thank you. These results have confused me profoundly. I've been knocking on doors up and down the country for the past few weeks. An internal polling that I individually collected seems to suggest a very strong performance from my party, up to an ambitious 40 seats, which is clearly not what we have seen tonight. We have not won any target seat as of yet, most painfully Tyne and Weir, where our no classical liberals message seemingly did not deter hippies from voting Green. Now, I have heard rumours of Russian interference in this election, but it is not my place to comment on this, and I trust the speakership will investigate this as appropriate. Another thing that has concerned me is evidence I've been presented regarding homosexuality within the top ranks of the party. This is a serious matter, more important than the election, without question, and an explanation of my distraction in this election. This is the very fabric of our party and our society, and something I could not reconcile with my own views. The gays, the Russian government, and Antifa conspired to best us, and it worked. Now, to end with some maternal...
It sounds like something out of an Alex Jones script, I'm
Now,
sorry.
to end with some eternal words from a political giant and one of my personal heroes. From the very first day of my leadership, I have faced questions about my Christian faith. I've tried to answer with grace and patience. Sometimes my answers could have been wiser. At the start of this election, I found myself, under scrutiny again, asked about matters to do with my faith. I felt guilty that this focus was distracting attention from our campaign, obscuring our message. Journalists have every right to ask what they see fit. The consequences of the focus of my faith is that I have found myself torn between living as a faithful Christian and serving as a political leader. A better, wiser person than me may have been able to deal with this more successfully, to have remained faithful to Christ while leading a political party in the current environment. To be a political leader, especially for a progressive Liberal Party in 2017, to live as a committed Christian, to hold faithfully to the Bible's teachings has felt impossible to me. I'm a liberal to my fingertips, and that liberalism means I'm passionate about defending the rights and liberties of people who believe different things to me. There are Christians in politics who take the view that they should impose the tenets of faith in society, but I've not taken that approach because I disagree with this. It's not liberal, it's counterproductive when it comes to advancing the gospel. Even so, I seem to be the subject of suspicion in what I believe and what my faith is. In which case we are kidding ourselves if we think we yet live in a tolerant liberal society. That's why I've chosen to step down. Yeah, okay. Basically, Mikey stepping down, unbelievably.
Yes, this is certainly, that was quite a speech we had there.
I think that's the first time I've heard the National Union Party described as a Liberal Party.
Well, he's probably. I mean, I know the Conservatives were initially cracking out the champagne. Perhaps when things started to go less their way, it was passed to the right.
Well, we've been cracking out the champagne, that's for sure.
Of course, just getting a word here that according to the rules, we've had a tweet from the Red Lion pub in Westminster, who sponsor the official, quote unquote, official drinking game of election results, and they're saying that everyone is now having to down a dirty pint because the party leader has just resigned. And if you didn't down a dirty pint for the Cumbria result, you might as well do too.
Well,
I mean, collectively, I lost about 4,000 pounds on both the leadership resignation and Cumbria.
When the fun stops, stop. That is the message of gambling this time. Now, I'd like to go around the panel because you've heard my views on it. How can a government be assembled here, and what should that government look like?
I think an establishment coalition between, like a grand coalition between the Conservatives and Labour, as far as Brexit is concerned, is probably the most stable. But the one obstacle to that is going to be the Labour Party membership, and whether they'll actually agree to that. I can see them compromising on perhaps not pursuing any divisive economic policies or social policies in the name of getting a decent Brexit, but then how would Labour feel about working with the Conservatives, their arch rivals, for a century?
I think a very good government option is for Labour, the Liberal Democrats, and the Classical Liberals to sort their differences out and go into government, giving them, if I'm counting this correctly, a 42-seat government.
It would still be very shy of a majority. Where would they make up the votes?
But it also still outnumbers the Conservative NUP 38. Now there could be some sort of confident supply scheme going on with the Libertarians or the Greens or any of the national parties that would get us closer to a majority than the Conservative NUP ever would.
Yeah, so it's certainly an interesting suggestion. Although it could perhaps be said that the only coalition that wouldn't have to play sort of great party political games would be the Grand Coalition option. So that is certainly one thing to consider as what would be, because these are trying times, particularly with Brexit. That it makes sense for them to try and provide the best and most stable possible outcome, and that seems to be with a Grand Coalition. But it is indeed whether the Labour Party membership will support it, and even for the Conservatives, if they'll endorse and work with a party that has advocated for things like universal basic services, which is such a polar opposite to what the Conservatives advocate with their universal credit.
I'd say it's very much dependable on the sort of coalition deal which is actually made. So, for example, if we base this on the German coalition situation, what you could see is a Conservative Prime Minister. You could see a Labour Chancellor, a Labour Foreign Secretary, and a Labour Brexit Secretary, maybe. And with significant influence over the economic side of things, then you could possibly see you could almost call it a moderate or centre government with a few centre-right policies, a few centre-left policies.
I'm just going to have to say that I'm going to have to go back to Sinn Féin HQ, so I'll see you all later. Have a great night.
It's been a delight, Trev. Have a very good night.
Yeah, I'm needed back at LP UK headquarters as well. We've got a lot of discussions to do, but what I will say is, as far as coalitions and supply and confidence is concerned, the LP UK will be willing to talk to all parties as long as we get a good deal out of it for us. So yeah, that's my last piece.
Thank you for joining.
Not for the country.
Obviously,
calm
for the
down.
country.
Calm down. Come on.
That
was uncalled for.
Thank you very much for coming onto the stream today.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Well,
the question is, I have one last question. How secure is Leafy Emerald's position?
It was never in doubt.
Was it never? Really?
No, it was never in doubt.
All those times people doubted it.
No, I think those people who doubt it don't quite understand how the Conservative Party works. I think we all know from my position, I was significantly reduced my seat count, but then I went on to the next election and then drastically increased it. I believe this is very much the case of Leafy Emerald. He's the third Conservative Prime Minister in a year. And you must take into consideration the Tories are still the largest party. We also must take into account the fact that they're still the largest party despite a budget failing.
But wasn't that only a technical majority, or sure PR put out?
Well,
I mean, how technical a majority does a majority have to be when you have 52 seats?
I mean, sure. Let's call it what it was. It was a failure. However, despite this failure, the Conservatives retained itself as the largest party. Now, imagine what would happen if that budget did not fail. If that budget did not fail, then we could be seeing, for example, a Conservative Party on 36, 37 seats.
Potentially. But that is all we have time for, because we are going to cut off the next programme, which I understand will be very good. So,
Coronation.
See, man knows better than I do. Now, I would like to thank all of our guests and all of our staff here at the Model Broadcasting Corporation for coming on this evening and assisting us. I would also like to pay special thanks and tribute to Dunks11, who, while he wasn't busy campaigning in Cumbria, was using his precious free time to assist us with our graphical enterprises here. So a very special thanks to him. A very special thanks to the speakership for an outstandingly run election from a technical side. Indeed, a true showing of diligence and dedication to duty with the amount of hard work and indeed all-nighters they put in for this. So a special thanks to them. And from us at the Model Broadcasting Corporation, British Broadcasting Corporation that is, we would like to wish you a very good night and try not to get too salty.